Chapter 311. Inside the cultivation room, Emotinga sat cross-legged. The spiritual aura in her dantian was abundant, including a lot of yang spiritual aura. After such a long period of cultivation, the yang spiritual aura had smoothly entered her dantian and merged with her yin spiritual aura, forming a cycle. After forming her gold core, her dantian expanded a lot, which gave space for yin and yang spiritual aura to converge. The yang spiritual aura she obtained from Qin, she allowed her art of the origin to be truly displayed, and a real origin appeared in her body. After completing a great circulatory cycle and returning the spiritual aura to her dantian, Emotinga stood up and walked out of the cultivation room. Outside the room, the wind blew gently, the bamboo leaves rustled, and Feifei squeaked and pounced on her. Xiaohu went to cultivate again. In this virtual sky world, there were only two spiritual beasts. Feifei loved to play, so it waited for Emotinga to come out. It was very happy. She smiled and played with Feifei for a while. In the end, she gave it several medicinal pills to appease it, and let it play with butterflies by itself. It was strange. Although she let the two spiritual beasts eat the spiritual plants in the virtual sky world, they seemed to like medicinal pills more. Perhaps medicinal pills had a better taste? Thinking of this, Emotinga couldn't help but smile. She felt a little bored, so she couldn't help but look back at the bamboo house next to her. This was Qin Shi's cultivation room. It had been 3 years since he entered closed-door meditation to form his nascent soul. His cultivation room had always been quiet, with only the continuous circulation of spiritual aura. During this time, Emotinga understood one thing. People weren't afraid of not being able to get something, but losing it after getting it. In the past, when she was alone and had no worries, she didn't feel anything when she entered closed-door meditation for 5 to 6 years, or even more than 10 years. However, after she got used to living with him, she always felt like she was worried about something when she suddenly lost him. Emotinga just smiled when she realized this. She didn't feel annoyed at all. In the past, she always worried about what she would do if she got it and lost it later. So she worried about gains and losses. In fact, so what if she lost it? Cherishing the time she got it and slowly adapting to it after losing it, this was a truly free and easy state of mind. If she was afraid of losing it and didn't dare to get it, it would be too tangled and impossible to break through. It had been 3 years. She hadn't reached the middle stage of the core formation realm, but she wasn't far from the peak of the early stage. The benefits she obtained from dual cultivation weren't inferior to Qin Shi's. Before she formed her gold core, Qin Shi once healed her, so she obtained a portion of his yang spiritual aura and learned what the origin was. After their dual cultivation, yin and yang intersected, allowing her to obtain a lot of yang spiritual energy all at once. The art of the origin was truly activated. She had originally thought that after obtaining the Sinu art of origin, her cultivation speed was already extremely fast. Only after her body had truly formed origin did she realize that this was the true meaning of the art of origin. The 5 elements generated each other, and yin and yang intersected in an endless cycle. Only then did the primal chaos begin and life appear. If it was said that she originally needed to absorb yin's spiritual energy from the outside world to increase her cultivation, then now she could use the origin immemorial in her body to create spiritual energy. Of course, the speed at which she produced spiritual energy was not very fast. If she wanted to cultivate normally, she would still need to absorb spiritual energy from the outside world and turn it into her own. However, the ability to produce spiritual energy on her own was unheard of in the current cultivation world. When she absorbed spiritual energy, her body was also producing spiritual energy. This way, her cultivation would always be ahead of others. This was the most heaven-defying thing. But she didn't know whether Qin Shi would also be like this after obtaining her yin spiritual energy. Since his art of 3 primordial cycles also required 3 auras to circulate, the principle was similar to her art of the origin, so it should be similar. Thinking up to this point, she cast her gaze towards Qin Shi's cultivation room. Although Qin Shi hadn't come out yet, based on the spiritual aura movement in the virtual sky world, She knew that his closed-door meditation this time was very smooth. Maybe he could really advance to the nascent soul realm smoothly. It was just that she didn't know how long it would take him. The closed-door meditation time for nascent soul formation was generally longer than for core formation. But it was different for everyone. It could range from 2 to 10 years. Before Qin entered closed-door meditation, his spiritual aura was overflowing. So it was reasonable to say that success would come naturally and wouldn't take too long. With this thought in mind, Emotienga started to worry again. It's been 3 years, but he still hasn't come out of closed-door meditation. He hasn't even made any movements. Could it be that he encountered some kind of problem? Regardless of whether she encountered a problem or not, she couldn't think of anything now. She absolutely couldn't disturb him during his soul formation. The only thing she could do was wait outside. At the very least, the spiritual aura inside the virtual sky world was peaceful. So he should be fine now. Emotienga continued to live her days of concocting medicinal pills with her eyes open and cultivating with her eyes closed. Cultivating was timeless. In the blink of an eye, another 2 years had passed. One day, Emotienga, who was cultivating, suddenly opened her eyes. The virtual sky world was connected to her mind. Just now, she sensed a sudden big change in the virtual sky world. She stood up, pushed the door open, and was immediately stunned. Inside the virtual sky world, the originally very rich spiritual aura condensed into dew-like spiritual beads. Their spiritual light illuminated the entire sky. Countless spiritual beads rushed towards Qi's cultivation room, surrounding the bamboo house. The beads sparkled brightly, making the surroundings look as beautiful as a fairyland. Emotienga recalled that when martial uncle Xianin formed his nascent soul, this kind of scene also appeared on Clear Spring Peak. She couldn't help but smile. In other words, Qin was close to successfully forming his nascent soul. Next, as long as he stabilized his mind and got rid of his inner demon, he could advance to the nascent soul realm. Thinking up to this point, her heart was filled with joy. She secretly prayed that Qin could pass the final test and successfully advance to the nascent soul realm. He had already failed 3 times and experienced enough setbacks. If he still didn't succeed, it would be too disheartening. Time passed day by day. The spiritual light didn't disperse for several months. During these months, Emotienga also stayed outside the cultivation room, without leaving for even a moment. At first, Qin's cultivation room only attracted those spiritual beads slowly. Later, the speed became faster and faster. Gradually, it turned into a huge whirlpool. Inside this whirlpool, countless spiritual beads rushed inside, and the spiritual aura pressure also became stronger and stronger. Emotienga felt that she could barely stabilize her mind under this spiritual aura pressure, only if she used the soul-refining art with all her strength. The stronger the spiritual aura pressure, the happier she felt. She had the soul-refining art. Even if Qin was in the peak stage of the core formation realm, he couldn't suppress her with spiritual aura pressure, unless he was a nascent soul cultivator. This showed that Qin wasn't far from successfully forming his nascent soul. After an unknown amount of time, Qin gently opened his eyes in the cultivation room. A few short years were like a lifetime to him. This time, he finally succeeded in walking out of his inner demon. He smiled and looked down at his hands. He finally succeeded in forming his nascent soul. He stood up, spiritual aura swirling around his body like a flying spiritual bird. His body was full of power, the power to move mountains and drain seas. This was the feeling of forming his nascent soul. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, then opened them again with a smile on his face. He gently pushed the door of the cultivation room open. Their eyes met. A few years of separation was like a lifetime to him. He greedily looked at the person in front of him, not letting go of the slightest subtle expression. He remembered that in the dream of his inner demon, he succeeded in forming his nascent soul. 100 years later, she also entered the nascent soul realm. The two of them held hands and cultivated the path of immortality together. Their names shook the celestial pole, and they entered the deification realm together. This time, he didn't immerse himself in it for long before he jumped out of it. As long as he opened his eyes, this was their real life. Why would they need an illusion? Emotinga didn't speak, and neither did Qinshi. They just walked towards each other naturally, and hugged each other quietly. Because of this nascent soul, they were almost separated from each other. Today they finally got what they wanted. Emotinga smiled slightly. She hadn't moved from this place for several months. Her voice was a little hoarse. Martial Uncle Shojing, congratulations on advancing to the nascent soul realm. Qinshi also smiled. He couldn't help but lower his head and bite her. Martial Uncle N? Isn't that right? Emotinga stood on her tiptoes and also bit him. She hugged him with her arms and teased. Advancing to the nascent soul realm, and becoming a Lord Taoist. From now on, you won't be counted in the sect. Martial Uncle Shojing, you can't run away from the title of an old cow eating cradle grass. Then you can't run away. Qinshi hugged her waist, lifted her up and kissed her. Never white hair against red makeup. Never afraid of a pear blossom crushing a begonia. After an unknown amount of time, the breathless kiss finally confirmed each other's existence. Qinshi held Emotinga in his arms, and sat directly on the step she was sitting on before. How long have you been waiting outside? Not long. I don't remember. Don't remember? Qinshi lowered his head. You really don't remember? Or you don't want to tell me? Emotinga rolled her eyes and smiled. Since you know I don't want to tell you, why did you ask me? All right. Qinshi sighed. He knew he couldn't ask her if she didn't want to tell him. So he changed the topic. How long did it take me to form my nascent soul? 5 years. Emotinga asked. Did it go smoothly? Qinshi nodded happily. Very smoothly. There were almost no twists and turns. However, I spent a lot of time fusing with the Yin spiritual aura. So it took me 5 years. It's good that it went smoothly. Emotinga was silent for a while, then suddenly said. At that time, I was really afraid that something would go wrong after you broke your gold core. If his gold core broke, and he couldn't form his nascent soul, his cultivation level would go down the drain. If he failed to form his gold core, he could keep trying, but forming his nascent soul wasn't like that. The risk of failure was too great. During this time, she also thought about what would happen if he failed, and his cultivation level was damaged. In the end, she only strengthened her conviction. The nascent soul was a path cultivators like them who yearned for the great Tao had to take. Even if there was a risk of having their gold core broken, and their cultivation destroyed, shouldn't they still try to form their nascent souls? Loving each other didn't mean they had to become timid. Instead, they had to walk on with more courage. How could that be? Qinshi stared at her with a faint smile and said softly, I want to walk on the great Tao of immortality with you. He rarely said sweet words, but he had many vows hidden in such words. Emotinga smiled and said, Rest assured, in 100 years at most, I'll also form my nascent soul. Then we'll form our deification together. 100 years? He stared at her without blinking, but he suddenly smiled and said, 100 years later, you won't be 200 years old yet. Are you so sure you'll become the youngest nascent soul cultivator in the celestial pole? Of course, Emotinga said without blushing. I have aptitude that's rarely seen in thousands of years, and I also have fated chances that haven't appeared in tens of thousands of years in the celestial pole. Why can't I become the youngest nascent soul cultivator in the celestial pole? Chapter 312. Emotinga was very confident that she could advance to the nascent soul realm within 100 years. With her aptitude, the virtual sky world, and now with Qinshi, she was very sure that she could advance to the nascent soul realm within 100 years, as long as there were no accidents. Of course, the matter of forming a nascent soul wasn't decided solely by talent. She understood this point, so during these 100 years, she definitely had to work hard in her cultivation. After Qinshi finished his chores, he asked Emotinga, Since I've successfully advanced to the nascent soul realm, why weren't there any celestial phenomena when I came out? When Qinshi advanced to the nascent soul realm, almost all the spiritual aura in the virtual sky world turned into spiritual beads. But apart from that, there were no thunderstorms or spiritual objects condensed from spiritual aura. So it really didn't look like the advanced stage of the nascent soul realm. Emotinga already encountered this problem when she advanced to the nascent soul realm. She said the virtual sky world is a closed space, so how could there be celestial phenomena? When I advanced to the nascent soul realm, there weren't any celestial phenomena until I came out of the virtual sky world. I see. Qingxi asked again. How's the situation outside? Can we go out now? Emotinga didn't answer. Instead, she cast a spell to open the sky of the virtual sky world. The sky was red, and the ground was black. Demonic Mountain seemed to be a different world compared to before they entered the virtual sky world. Fortunately, the lightning, thunder, and the falling rocks had all stopped. It was just stabilized a year ago, but there are still a lot of drifting restrictions, Emotinga said. In the past year, no restrictions have collapsed. That's good. Qingxi stared at the outside world and said, in that case, we can prepare to go out. Huh. Emotinga was a little confused. We're going out now. There are still a lot of restrictions outside. Qingxi smiled and glanced at her. Have you forgotten? I've advanced to the nascent soul realm now, so these small restrictions are no longer a threat to me. Emotinga thought about it and smiled. I haven't gotten used to it yet. Although Demonic Mountain was dangerous for nascent soul cultivators, as long as they didn't go to dangerous places like the depths of a mortal's ruins, there wouldn't be any danger. Originally, the two of them were trapped here. If they wanted to get out, they had to solve a lot of things. Now that Qingxi had advanced to the nascent soul realm, those problems were no longer a problem, such as these restrictions and the way to get out. Back then, when Qingxi and Yihai were trapped on Demonic Mountain, it was Yihai who used all his spiritual aura to help Qingxi escape. Now that Qingxi had advanced to the nascent soul realm, he could rely on his own cultivation level to break the restrictions once he left Demonic Mountain. However, when they thought back to such peaceful days, both of them felt reluctant to part. Several days later, the two of them finished preparing everything and came out of the virtual sky world. As soon as she left the virtual sky world, she felt the fierce gales. Qingxi frowned. With a wave of his sleeve, a wisp of spiritual aura surged up, blocking the gales outside. Then, he got on the flying cloud and headed towards a mortal's ruins together. Along the way, the two of them saw a lot of skeletons. Some of them even had Qianquan bags, magic weapons, and other things scattered around them. Emotinga didn't hesitate to put them all into her bag. She didn't find any strange things on this trip to Demonic Mountain, but her harvest wasn't small. 10 years ago, before they escaped into the virtual sky world, the two of them picked up a lot of things. Moreover, this time, many cultivators were involved in the restrictions and died here. Now that the restrictions were stable, these people's belongings became theirs again. Watching Emotinga happily picking up the scattered Qianquan bags, Qingxi couldn't help but find it funny. You have a unique treasure like the virtual sky world, and you usually have the support of the sect, so you don't lack spirit stones, do you? Why do you still like picking up things so much? Emotinga said confidently. You've never lacked spirit stones, so of course you don't know the pain of lacking spirit stones. The things are right in front of me, so it'd be a waste not to pick them up. When she wandered around with second uncle, she wished she could split one spirit stone into two. This kind of pain of lacking spirit stones had always been engraved in her heart, so it was impossible for her to turn a blind eye to these Qianquan bags. As they walked and picked up things, the two of them slowly headed towards Immortal's ruins. After the previous earthquake, the scenery of Demonic Mountain changed completely, so it took them a long time to find the right way. Fortunately, tens of thousands of feet peak was split in two during the collapse of the restrictions, so they could directly fly over the remaining height without having to be as careful as when they came. When they arrived at tens of thousands of feet peak and returned to Immortal's ruins, Emotinga asked, Senior Marshal Brother, is there any danger in breaking the restrictions here? They were trapped in the virtual sky world, and the entrance to Demonic Mountain had long been closed. If they wanted to go out, they could only go through the place Qingxi discovered. Back then, in order to break the restrictions, Qingxi used the secret technique of the art of 3 primordial cycles to temporarily raise his cultivation level to the nascent soul realm. After he went out, his vitality was greatly damaged, and his cultivation level directly fell back to the aura refining realm. It took him more than 10 years to recover his vitality. She knew what she was worried about, so he said with a smile, "Don't worry, the process of breaking the restrictions isn't dangerous. I'm a real nascent soul cultivator now, so I won't get hurt." Oh, Emotienga was a little relieved. He had just advanced to the nascent soul realm, and hadn't stabilized his realm yet. If he got hurt again, he wouldn't be the same as before he formed his nascent soul. "Let's go this way." After searching for a while, they finally found the right place. She pulled her and flew towards the restrictions. It had been 10 years since the last time Demonic Mountain opened, but the turbulence it caused still hadn't subsided. Demonic Mountain had existed in the celestial pole for millions of years since ancient times. There were also records of exploration for more than 100,000 years. Countless people had died there, but there had never been so many deaths. More than 90 years ago, the last time Demonic Mountain opened, the great restrictions collapsed and many cultivators died inside. At that time, the whole celestial pole was in an uproar, calling it a disaster that hadn't happened in thousands of years. But no one expected that the next time Demonic Mountain opened, there would be even more deaths. Except for those who left in advance, all the aura refining and foundation building cultivators died on Demonic Mountain. None of them escaped. The core formation cultivators fared better, but only 20 to 30% of them escaped. Even half of the nascent soul cultivators died inside. Of course, the collapse of the restrictions wasn't the main reason why the nascent soul cultivators died. The reason why so many nascent soul cultivators died was because they fought fiercely in Jade Palace. It was just that ordinary cultivators, even ordinary disciples of big sects, didn't know this reason. Ordinary cultivators only knew that the last time Demonic Mountain opened, more than 30 nascent soul cultivators entered one after another, but less than 20 of them came out alive. Among them, there were more than 10 nascent soul cultivators who died, and 5 or 6 of them were from the 7 great cultivation groups. This number shocked the celestial pole. Even Tiandao sect, the number 1 cultivation group in the celestial pole, only had 7 nascent soul cultivators. In that case, it was equivalent to each of the 7 great cultivation groups losing 1 nascent soul cultivator. Among the 7 great cultivation groups, it took several hundred years for each of them to produce a nascent soul cultivator. This kind of loss was more serious than any demonic beast. In the past 10 years, almost all the cultivators in the celestial pole sighed with emotion. 70 years ago, they experienced a rarely seen demonic beast riot, and now they also experienced 2 riots on Demonic Mountain. The cultivation level of the celestial pole would most likely take several hundred years to recover. Chapter 313. This year, it was time for Tiandao sect to hold the Immortals Assembly again. Mount Yuheng was bustling with people coming and going. 10 years ago, Tiandao sect lost a nascent soul cultivator and several core formation cultivators on Demonic Mountain, as well as a large number of low-level disciples. Tiandao sect's strength was greatly reduced, and its reputation as the number 1 sect in the celestial pole was in danger. Because of this, the higher-ups of Tiandao sect made a prompt decision to open the mountain gate and recruit disciples. In the past, although this decision couldn't immediately solve the problem of the decline in strength, Tiandao sect would slowly recover its strength after more than 100 years and still hold the position of the number 1 sect in the celestial pole. But more than 70 years ago, after the demonic beast riot, all the cultivation sects had just recovered their vitality. Then they suffered a great disaster and opened their mountain gates one after another. In the past, it was difficult to enter the mountain gate with many disciples, but now, it immediately became a situation where all the sects fought for disciples. Although Tiandao sect was known as the number 1 sect, its reputation had declined, and it couldn't guarantee that it would get enough outstanding disciples in this situation. Because of this, Master Taoist Yanglin, the new sect head of Tiandao sect, almost had his hair turn white from worry. Although he was the sect leader, he still had to answer to the nascent soul Grand Supreme Elders. And he also had to deal with the power struggle. If he couldn't solve this problem, the nascent soul Grand Supreme Elders might be unhappy, and the position of sect leader would be changed. Although the position of sect head was a punching bag, it was very important to the interests of his family, so he couldn't quit it even if he wanted to. Thinking of this, Master Taoist Yanglin somewhat envied those cultivators who cultivated hard. Although they didn't have the support of their families and cultivated hard, they could wholeheartedly devote themselves to cultivation without paying attention to these mundane things. This was also a blessing. However, although Tiandao sect wasn't as powerful as before, it was still much better than those small and medium-sized cultivation sections. As soon as the Immortals Assembly was announced, countless low-level cultivators suddenly rushed to Mount Yuheng. He only hoped that among these low-level cultivators, there would be a few disciples with outstanding talents. That way, he could explain to the Grand Supreme Elders. On Mount Yuheng, among the low-level cultivators waiting for the Immortals Assembly, someone shouted, "Wu Laosan, why are you here?" The person who was called was a cultivator in his 30s with a pale face and a short beard. His cultivation level was only in the 7th layer of the aura refining realm. If it was in the past, with this kind of cultivation, he wouldn't even need to think about participating in the Tiandao sect's Immortals Assembly. He could only try his luck at a small cultivation sect. It just so happened that they came at a good time. In the past 10 years, Tiandao sect held an Immortals Assembly almost every year, and many disciples in the 7th layer of the aura refining realm were able to join the sect. The man called Wu Laosan turned his head and looked at the lean man who called him. He curled his lips and said, "If you Li Xiang can come, why can't I Wu Sandy come?" This situation was not uncommon in the Immortals Assembly in recent years. Originally, if the Immortals Assembly was held every 3 or 10 years, a large number of young cultivators from all over the world would gather at that time. Most of them didn't know each other. However, since it was held every year, the number of cultivators participating in the Immortals Assembly was limited. Naturally, there would be a lot of acquaintances. The lean man named Li Xiang grinned when he heard Wu Sandy's words. He put his hand on Wu Sandy's shoulder and said, "Wu Laosan, we've known each other since childhood. I'm just saying hello. I don't mean anything else. Don't misunderstand." Misunderstand? Humph. Wu Sandy cast a glance at Li Xiang and said disdainfully, "Forget it. If Li Xiang's words can be trusted, the sun will rise from the west." Hey, what do you mean by that? Li Xiang patted his shoulder hard. "Let's forget about the past. We're old acquaintances. It must be fate that brought us together to meet in this Immortals Assembly. Come. Let's have a chat. Who knows, we might even be able to give each other some advice." Wu Sandy looked at him suspiciously for a while, but he was eventually persuaded. Right, they were all here to participate in the Immortals Assembly. Although they had conflicts since childhood, they didn't hate each other. It would be good to have a chat. Thereupon, the two of them found a corner and began to talk about the Immortals Assembly. They talked about cultivation and exchanged information. They were both in the 7th layer of the aura refining realm. In the past, they really wouldn't have had the chance to enter a big sect like Tiandao sect. They couldn't let go of such an opportunity. Who knew when Tiandao sect would receive enough disciples? And it wouldn't be as easy to enter as it was now. After they finished talking about what they heard, Li Xiang still wanted to continue. He asked, "Wu Laosan, all 7 great cultivation groups are recruiting disciples. Why did you also come to Tiandao sect?" Wu Sandy stroked his mustache and snorted. "What other reason could there be? It's close. Besides, Tiandao sect is known as the #1 cultivation group, so it's better than other cultivation groups." No. Li Xiang shook his hand and said, "Wu Laosan, you're wrong." "Wrong?" Wu Sandy glared at him. "What's wrong? Among the 7 great cultivation groups, there's no need to mention Danding School. It suffered heavy losses 70 years ago, so it's only a medium-sized cultivation group now. Lingshou sect specializes in beast taming techniques, so ordinary cultivators like us who don't have talent in beast taming would find it hard to enter. As for Zhengfa sect, it specializes in water techniques, but we don't have water spiritual roots. As for Biyun sect, I'm not a female cultivator, so their requirements for male cultivators are much higher. Gujian sect isn't bad, but it's a sword cultivation group, so it won't be easy for them to cultivate again. In this case, the remaining ones are Xianqing school and Tiandao sect. Although Xianqing school isn't bad, it's still a bit inferior to Tiandao sect. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Li Xiang made 3 mistakes in a row and interrupted Wu Sandy. He squinted at him and said, "When it comes to cultivation, I, Li Xiang, may not be as good as you, but when it comes to these things, you can't see them as clearly as I can." Although Wu Sandy wasn't convinced, Li Xiang admitted that his cultivation wasn't as good as his, which made him feel very comfortable, so he didn't care about such a trivial matter as being interrupted. But he still felt he was right. "What's wrong? Why don't you tell me?" "In fact, what you said before was correct. Danding school and Lingshou sect are either too weak, or they're not suitable for us. But you said Xianqing school is a bit weaker than Tiandao sect, so you're wrong." "Why?" Wu Sandy glared at him and said, "Xianqing school has always been a bit weaker than Tiandao sect. Although Tiandao sect lost 1 nascent soul cultivator 10 years ago, they still have 6, and 2 of them are in the late stage of the nascent soul realm. Xianqing school only has 1 late-stage nascent soul cultivator. Although no nascent soul cultivator died 10 years ago, and there are still 5 of them now, 1 late-stage nascent soul cultivator is equivalent to several early-stage nascent soul cultivators. This strength is obvious at a glance." "Hehe, you've only seen a little bit on the surface," Li Xiang said proudly. "Yes, the strength of nascent soul cultivators in Tiandao sect is indeed a bit stronger than that of Xianqing school. But have you thought about what will happen in the next several hundred years?" Wu Sandy looked at him suspiciously. "What? Do you want to say that many Xianqing school cultivators will advance to the nascent soul realm? But Tiandao sect also has many talented disciples. How can it be worse than Xianqing school? It's not bad. This was Tiandao sect after all." Li Xiang's loud discussion seemed to indicate that Tiandao sect was inferior to Xianqing school, which had long attracted other people's attention. Those who came to participate in Tiandao sect's Immortals Assembly all had a good impression of Tiandao sect, so their gazes were already filled with hostility when they heard Li Xiang's words. Li Xiang was a slippery person, so he naturally noticed this. He said unhurriedly, "When did I say Tiandao sect was inferior to Xianqing school? What I said was, it's still too early for you to think Xianqing school lost to Tiandao sect. Yes, Tiandao sect is a bit stronger in terms of nascent soul cultivators, but the development of a sect doesn't only rely on nascent soul cultivators, but also on thousands of low-level disciples. The people around them were all low-level aura-refining cultivators who wanted to enter the sect." Hearing this made them feel comfortable and less hostile towards Li Xiang. Li Xiang continued, "Have you ever thought about how many low-level disciples Tiandao sect lost during the demonic beast riot and the 2 disasters on Demonic Mountain? The number of disciples in the aura-refining and foundation-building realms was at least 1,000. Also, there were 7 or 8 core formation cultivators. So this is why Tiandao sect is stronger than Xianqing school. It has thousands more aura-refining disciples, 100 more foundation-building disciples, and almost 10 more core formation cultivators. It's because it has more low-level disciples that it has more potential. Tiandao sect always has 1 or 2 more nascent soul cultivators than Xianqing school." These words attracted the attention of the low-level cultivators around them. Many people gathered around them, and those who didn't also pricked up their ears to listen. Li Xiang became even more proud and said loudly, "But do you know that Xianqing school didn't lose any aura-refining disciples during the demonic beast riot? Also, during the 2 disasters on Demonic Mountain, few low-level disciples participated because it was too far away from Demonic Mountain. In this way, Xianqing school's number of aura-refining disciples to core formation cultivators isn't worse than Tiandao sect at all. Maybe even a bit more." At this point, someone interjected, "Fellow Taoist, how do you know about these things? You're not a sect disciple, so how do you know the number of disciples in a big sect?" "Hey!" Li Xiang glanced at the cultivator who raised the question, raised his head and said, "Brother, you don't care about these things, so of course you don't know. No matter how big a sect is, it doesn't have more than 10,000 people. Small cultivators like us can't know the exact number of cultivators, but we can estimate it. Someone in the crowd said, "Yes, fellow Taoist is right. This isn't a top secret. We can estimate the number of disciples these big sects accept every year." "Yes, yes," someone echoed. Li Xiang was extremely happy and said, "Fellow Taoist is right. We estimate it from the number of disciples they accept." "Enough, enough." Someone couldn't bear his proud manner and said, "If you have something to say, just say it. What's the point of talking about this?" Although the words weren't polite, they were waiting to hear it, so Li Xiang didn't get angry. He continued to say, "Okay, let's continue talking about business. In terms of the number of low-level disciples, Xianqing school isn't worse than Tiandao sect. So in terms of potential, it can also be said to be equal. But there's one more thing. I don't know if you've noticed, but Xianqing school has suffered very little or no losses in these events. This is very important for a disciple's cultivation mentality. With this in mind, I'm afraid the potential of Xianqing school's low-level disciples will surpass that of Tiandao sect." Li Xiang looked around and saw that all the cultivators were silent and didn't object to his opinion, so he continued to say, "Then what's Xianqing school's disadvantage now? Even its nascent soul cultivators are still suppressed by Tiandao sect. Most of Tiandao sect's nascent soul cultivators are facing death, while Xianqing school's strength isn't as good as Tiandao sect's, but most of their lifespans haven't passed the halfway mark. Considering this, I don't think I need to say whose future is better, right? I dare say that in the next 100 years, if Xianqing school is the first to produce a nascent soul cultivator, their momentum will flourish, and the title of the number one sect in the celestial pole will be theirs." The crowd was silent. After a while, someone said sarcastically, "Since that's the case, why doesn't this fellow Taoist go to Xianqing school? He even came to participate in Tiandao sect's Immortals Assembly." That person was obviously a supporter of Tiandao sect. Li Xiang didn't get angry. He smiled and said, "Brother, you haven't been to Xianqing school, right? I'm telling you, Xianqing school didn't lose many low-level disciples. They've recovered their strength in recent years. Although they've also opened their gates in the past few years, they've been recruiting disciples just as strictly. I, Li Xiang, am a little clever, but when it comes to cultivation, I'm not worth mentioning. I really don't have the confidence." That person sneered again. "Are you so sure that Xianqing school will produce a nascent soul cultivator first? Maybe it'll be Tiandao sect. At that time, they'll still have more nascent soul cultivators than Xianqing school, and they'll also be stronger than them. They won't be able to snatch the number one sect in the celestial pole no matter what." "I didn't say Xianqing school would be the first," Li Xiang said innocently. "I'm just analyzing what might happen. I've always said it might happen. Everyone heard it, right?" The onlookers nodded. What he said was indeed possible. But although it was only a possibility, Li Xiang's analysis was very reasonable. Among the onlookers, some people who were quite confident in their cultivation level thought that if Xianqing school really didn't lower their conditions for recruiting disciples, it meant that they were very confident. Should they go to Xianqing school to try it out first? Seeing that the onlookers all agreed with Li Xiang, the person was annoyed and said angrily, "Just wait. Tiandao sect will definitely produce a nascent soul cultivator first. At that time, Xianqing school will still be the second." Li Xiang smiled and said, "Brother, this kind of thing is really hard to say. It might be Tiandao sect or Xianqing school, but in the end, it's their big sect's business. We little cultivators can just chat when we have nothing to do. After all, we haven't even entered a sect yet." Yes, yes. In front of outsiders, Wu Sandy also stood on Li Xiang's side. "We're just chatting. Fellow Taoist, you don't need to be excited. You don't need to be excited." At this point, a sudden clap of thunder was heard. The sky suddenly flashed with dazzling golden light. The wind and clouds surged, and the thunder rumbled endlessly. All the cultivators looked up and saw countless spiritual lights flashing in the sky. Among them, spiritual birds were flying and auspicious clouds were surging. A strong spiritual aura pressure shrouded them. The The spiritual aura of the little cultivators suddenly became chaotic, making it hard for them to breathe. Some people with weaker cultivation levels even vomited blood and knelt down. The crowd began to stir. Someone shouted, "What's wrong? What's that?" Then a knowledgeable person shouted, "Celestial phenomenon. It's celestial phenomenon. Someone formed his nascent soul." The cultivators who heard Li Xiang's discussion were secretly surprised. Someone from Tiandao sect formed his nascent soul again? It seemed Xianqing school really couldn't become the #1 sect. Li Xiang and Wu Sandy glanced at each other with bitterness in their eyes. It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? Then didn't they work for nothing? But this was indeed the celestial phenomenon of nascent soul formation. In the sky, the golden light became more and more dazzling, and gradually dyed the auspicious clouds red like fire. The auspicious clouds surged and slowly formed a shape. A pair of wings spread, tail feathers raised, and a clear cry. A divine beast phoenix. Chapter 314. Before Taoist Master Yanglin could finish sighing, he saw the celestial phenomena of nascent soul formation all over the sky, and he was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped. Just as he was wondering why no one in the sect was doing closed-door meditation to form his nascent soul, he received a summon from the head Grand Supreme Elder. He had no choice but to hurriedly order his disciples to inquire about it, and then he went to see the head Grand Supreme Elder first. "Greetings, Supreme Elders." As soon as he entered the abode of the head Grand Supreme Elder, Lu Dingyuan, he was stared at by 4 nascent soul elders, causing Taoist Master Yanglin to tremble with fear. There were 4 nascent soul elders, and one of them was a late-stage nascent soul cultivator. Even if they didn't deliberately release their spiritual aura, a middle-stage core formation cultivator, like him, would find it hard to remain calm and collected. The Tiandao sect originally had 7 nascent soul elders. One of them died 10 years ago during the extraterrestrial demon war, and another was seriously injured and was now in seclusion. Of the remaining 5, only one wasn't present. It seemed that the appearance of the nascent soul celestial phenomenon had shocked the higher-ups of the Tiandao sect. "Dispense with the formalities," said Grand Elder Lu Dingyuan, who sat in the seat of honor. He looked young, no more than 30 years old. He had a 3-inch beard and wore a Taoist crown and a Taoist robe. He looked like an immortal, but these were just appearances. Perfected Master Yanglin knew that this head Supreme Elder actually cultivated in devil arts. He was kind when he was in a good mood, but if he was in a bad mood, he would be very irritable. Therefore, although Master Taoist Yanglin said that there was no need for formalities, he still bowed respectfully and asked, "May I know what instructions Grand Supreme Elders have for me? Do I still need to instruct you?" Among the 4 nascent soul elders, Fairy Fengqing, the one with the most fiery temper, spoke up. She glanced outside, her phoenix eyes slanting. "Such a big movement. As the sect leader, you shouldn't be unaware, right?" Of course, Immortal Yanglin knew the reason, but he just asked out of politeness. He didn't expect to get it wrong again, so he could only answer with a bitter face, "I don't know either. There are a total of 5 senior martial brothers and sisters in the late stage of core formation in our sect. 2 of them are close to the peak stage of core formation, but these 2 senior martial brothers haven't said anything about forming their nascent souls. Disciple was just thinking about who is forming their nascent souls, so I only had time to send someone to inquire." Hearing those words, the 4 nascent soul realm elders looked at each other. Of course they knew about these things. It was just that there were some things that the sect leader knew more about, so they summoned him to ask. "Grand Supreme Elders," Taoist Yanglin mustered up his courage and said, "Disciple discovered that the celestial phenomenon appeared in the North Peak. The North Peak is connected to Demonic Mountain, and there's no Immortals Cave there at all. So Disciple boldly guessed that the celestial phenomenon isn't from our sect, or there's some secret behind it." After all, he was the sect leader. His words were quite insightful. Hearing this, the 4 nascent soul elders looked at Lu Dingyuan, the late nascent soul cultivator. Stroking his beard, Lu Dingyuan replied, "That's possible. Everyone knows the situation of the core formation cultivators in our sect. It's not a good time for them to form their nascent soul. Yet the celestial phenomenon appeared in the North Mountain. In my opinion, It's most likely not a cultivator from our sect. Senior Martial Brother Lu, Fairy Fengqing said with a frown. Who dares to form their nascent soul on the territory of my Tiandao sect? He was too daring. No matter what, we're the #1 sect in the celestial pole. There are so many nascent soul cultivators in our sect. And we also have Senior Martial Brother Lu and Senior Martial Brother Bian. How dare he? Lu Dingyuan shook his head. We'll know what's going on soon. There's no need to be anxious. After a long period of silence, the astronomical phenomenon still hadn't disappeared. The spiritual energy in the sky was even becoming more and more abundant. Dazzling golden light danced in the air. Suddenly, Fairy Fengqing exclaimed and stood up abruptly in surprise. Senior brothers, look. The other 3 nascent soul realm cultivators looked up at the same time and saw the auspicious clouds on the horizon forming the shape of a phoenix. Then he heard a clear cry like the cry of a phoenix. Phoenix celestial phenomenon. Lu Dingyuan also couldn't sit still. When cultivators formed their nascent souls, celestial phenomena would appear, and the auspicious clouds inside the celestial phenomena would take the shape of various spiritual beasts. When he formed his nascent soul, what appeared was a bishi, and at that time, it already shook East Kunwu. Swan and I was one of the 9 sons of the dragon, the descendant of a divine beast. Sure enough, he successfully cultivated to the late stage of nascent soul. The phoenix celestial phenomenon actually appeared on this young man? What did this mean? The phoenix was a true divine beast. Lu Dingyuan made a prompt decision and immediately sent out a teleportation talisman. After a while the teleportation talisman returned. After he put it away, his expression suddenly changed. Senior Martial Brother Lu? Fairy Fengqing asked. After a while, Lu Dingyuan's expression slowly calmed down. He stood up and said, Your Senior Martial Brother Bian already knows what's going on, so he's on his way. He glanced at his 3 junior martial brothers and sisters, who were all only in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. He sighed and said, It's Xianqing School's Qin Shoujing. He's forming his nascent soul on Demonic Mountain, and just broke the restriction. What? The 3 nascent soul cultivators were still confused, but Master Taoist Yanglin's expression changed first. After all, there was a difference in realm. No matter how talented a core formation cultivator was, nascent soul cultivators wouldn't pay much attention to him. Therefore, the 3 nascent soul elders weren't too familiar with Qin Shoujing's name. But Master Taoist Yanglin was very clear about it. Upon seeing the 3 nascent soul elders' questioning gazes, Master Taoist Yanglin calmed down and explained, Martial uncles, you probably don't know, but Qin Shoujing is the disciple of Lord Taoist Jinghe of Xianqing School. He's known as a genius. He formed his gold core 78 at that time, and shook the celestial pole. Oh, so it's him. One of the nascent soul cultivators said. Senior Martial Brother, Lu said a few years ago, that our core formation disciples were a bit worse than Xianqing schools. Qin Shoujing was one of them, right? Lu Dingyuan frowned and said in a deep voice, You don't know much, so you don't know. A few years ago, I heard he tried to form his nascent soul, so I kept this matter in mind. He failed to form his nascent soul 3 times in the past, so he came to Demonic Mountain. Later, he disappeared without a trace on Demonic Mountain. I even thought he'd already perished inside. But I didn't expect he actually came out alive, and even formed his nascent soul. Master Taoist Yanglin reported, Martial Uncle Lu, more than 90 years ago. Qin Shoujing also went to Demonic Mountain, and came out more than 10 years after the restriction was closed. Presumably, he knew some secrets on Demonic Mountain, so he could escape every time. I see. Lu Dingyuan pondered for a moment, then shook his head and sighed. It's really fate. I originally thought heaven blessed Tiandao sect, and let Qin Shoujing die on Demonic Mountain. I didn't expect that in the end, we still lost to Xianqing School. Alas! Fairy Fengqing's expression turned fierce. She said, Senior Martial Brother Lu, since he just happened to appear in Tiandao sect, why don't we just kill him on the spot? Lu Dingyuan shook his head. Junior Martial Sister Fengqing, sometimes killing people can't solve problems. Qin Jinghe must have Qin Shoujing's natal lamp. How could Qin Jinghe not know he's alive? Besides, Qin Shoujing's appearance was so big that the news couldn't be hidden. If he died in Tiandao sect, how could Xianqing school let us go? Now is the time for Tiandao sect to recuperate, not to fight. Even if the title of the #1 sect in the celestial pole is taken away, we can still get it back, but we can't afford to lose our disciples. What Senior Marshal Brother Lu said makes sense. An early-stage nascent soul cultivator said. An early-stage nascent soul cultivator said. We have Senior Marshal Brother Lu and Senior Marshal Brother Bayan. So Tiandao sect's power is still there. We don't need to be impatient. Fairy Fengqing wanted to say something, but Lu Dingyuan raised his hand and stopped her. They're here. At that moment, the celestial phenomenon gradually ended. Several flight lights flew over from the north peak of Mount Yuheng and stopped in front of Lu Dingyuan's Immortal's Cave. They were Lord Taoist Bayan, another late-stage nascent soul cultivator from Tiandao sect, Qin Shi, and Mo Tiange. In an instant, a smile appeared on Lu Dingyuan's face. He led his 3 nascent soul martial siblings and a group of disciples to welcome them. So it's fellow Taoist Shoujing, Brother Taoist Jinghe's beloved disciple. It's an honor to meet you. In any case, Qin Shi had just advanced to the nascent soul realm. A late-stage nascent soul cultivator treating him with such courtesy could be considered giving him enough face. So he also politely returned the salute with Mo Tiange. I don't dare. Greetings, Senior Marshal brothers and sisters of Tiandao sect. I had no choice but to form my nascent soul on Demonic Mountain. If I disturbed you, please forgive me. Haha, you're too kind. Lu Dingyuan felt a bit more comfortable when he heard Qin Shi calling himself a brat, but actually calling himself a junior humbly. He said, this is also a fated chance. Fellow Taoist Shoujing, please come in and have a seat. Qin Shi smiled, gave Mo Tiange a meaningful look, and followed Lu Dingyuan into his Immortal's Cave. Mo Tiange understood what he meant. Since Tiandao sect was treating them with courtesy, there shouldn't be any danger, so they could go in boldly without worry. After they entered Lu Dingyuan's Immortal's Cave, Lu Dingyuan introduced the nascent soul cultivators present to Qin Shi one by one. After greeting them, he saw Mo Tiange following behind Qin Shi, so he asked, this is? Qin Shi smiled and said, this is my junior martial sister, and also my Dao companion. Her Taoist name is Qingwei. Oh, Lu Dingyuan was a bit surprised. Although most nascent soul male cultivators took core formation female cultivators as their Dao companions, Mo Tiange's cultivation level was indeed a bit low. But in the end, this was other people's business, so Lu Dingyuan just smiled and didn't say much. He just glanced at his disciples and told them to treat Mo Tiange with the same courtesy. Everyone sat down and served tea. Lu Dingyuan said, fellow Taoist Shoujing, not only did you escape from death this time, but you also formed your nascent soul. You must have a lot of stories, right? Can you tell us? Qin Shi smiled. I was just lucky. 10 years ago, when the restrictions on Demonic Mountain collapsed, my junior martial sister and I happened to not be affected, but we were trapped inside and couldn't get out. During these 10 years, Demonic Mountain was extremely unstable, so we had to find a safe place to do closed-door meditation. Fortunately, I obtained some treasures inside and successfully formed my nascent soul, which allowed me to escape. Really? When the restrictions on Demonic Mountain collapsed, only a few people escaped. Fellow Taoist Shoujing was really lucky. Lu Dingyuan obviously didn't believe him, and Qin Shi also didn't intend to make him believe him. This kind of thing was tacit. Therefore, he just smiled and asked, Senior Marshal Brother Lu, we've been trapped in Demonic Mountain all these years. May I know the situation in Kunwu now? How many people escaped? Is my master, Lord Taoist Jinghe, doing well? Fellow Taoist Shoujing, rest assured. Lu Dingyuan answered with a smile. Fellow Taoist Jinghe was really lucky. He escaped with fellow Taoist Huayan from your group, and he only suffered minor injuries. On the other hand, I heard fellow Taoist Huayan was seriously injured. I don't know how he's been these years. Oh, thank you for telling me, Senior Marshal Brother Lu. Upon hearing this news, both Qin Shi and Mo Tiange breathed sighs of relief. At least they were still alive. Chapter 315. They only stayed in Tiandao sect for one day. On the second day, Emotienga and Qin Shi went back to Xianqing School. What they found interesting was that Xianqing School sent 2 disciples to Tiandao Sect's Immortals Assembly to fan the flames, trying to persuade some cultivators with good aptitudes to go to Xianqing School. Coincidentally, when they talked about which of Tiandao Sect or Xianqing School would have a nascent soul cultivator, they broke the restriction on Demonic Mountain and triggered the nascent soul celestial phenomenon, making the 2 disciples think that Tiandao Sect just happened to have a nascent soul cultivator and fell short of success. Soon the truth spread like wildfire. After learning that it was Xianqing School cultivators who triggered the nascent soul celestial phenomenon, a group of cultivators withdrew from Tiandao Sect's Immortals Assembly and wanted to go to Xianqing School to try their luck. The 2 disciples were overjoyed and soon contacted them. Since they were Xianqing School disciples and had a heavy responsibility, they didn't refuse and took the 2 foundation-building disciples with them. If they flew back to Xianqing School on their own, it would probably take them several months. The appearance of the nascent soul celestial phenomenon saved them a lot of time and effort, and they directly completed their task. The 2 disciples were extremely grateful to Qin Shi, and they were also very curious about Emotienga. Qin Shi had a cold personality and was now a nascent soul cultivator, so the 2 disciples didn't dare to ask too many questions. Seeing that Emotienga was quite kind, they surrounded her and asked all sorts of questions, calling her martial uncle very affectionately. After being trapped on Demonic Mountain for 10 years, Emotienga also wanted to inquire about the outside world, so she chatted with the 2 foundation-building disciples along the way. Martial Uncle Qingwei, I heard you formed your gold core before you were 100 years old. You're really amazing. We've heard about you before, but we never had the chance to meet you. Now that we can meet you, we're really lucky. The foundation-building disciple named Li Yang's mouth seemed to be smeared with honey, and he could flatter her easily. Of course, Emotienga didn't take his words seriously. She just thought it was quite interesting, so she said with a smile, Are you 2 specialized in carrying out a glib talk mission? He's very eloquent. Another disciple named Wu De felt a bit ashamed when he heard that. He said, Martial Uncle Qingwei, please don't mind him. We often go to other cultivation groups to spread some news. This brat is used to it, so compliments come out of his mouth easily. He didn't mean to offend you. As he said that, he glared at Li Yang. Martial Uncle is one of us, so don't talk like that. Li Yang rubbed his head and revealed an embarrassed smile. Martial Uncle Qingwei, although disciples' words are compliments, they're all true. You and Martial Uncle Shou Jing, oh no, Martial Ancestor Shou Jing, are legends in the sect. We've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time. But unfortunately, you 2 are elusive. It's difficult to meet you even if we wanted to. That was the truth. There was no need to mention Qin Shi. He rarely appeared in front of people. Even among the disciples who had been in the school for several decades, very few people had seen him. Emotienga also rarely went out. Aside from the time she took care of secular affairs for Lord Taoist Jinghe, more than 60 years ago, she often went back and forth between peaks to handle affairs. In the past few decades, she was either traveling outside or cultivating in closed-door meditation. Emotienga smiled and changed the topic. You 2 work for the Steward's Hall, so you must be well informed. May I know how our sect has been in the past 10 years? Our sect's situation? Wu De thought for a moment then answered. Martial Uncle, do you want to ask about our current strength and reputation? It's very good. Speaking of which, it's fortunate that we're far away from Demonic Mountain in western Kunwu. Every time Demonic Mountain opens, although several core formation martial uncles and nascent soul grandmasters go there, disciples below the foundation building realm rarely participate, so our losses aren't great. 10 years ago, when Demonic Mountain's great restriction collapsed, we only lost 2 core formation martial uncles and several foundation building cultivators, which is much better than other cultivation groups. Oh, Emotienga had already learned from Tiandao sect that her master and martial uncle Huayan were fine, but she still asked again, Are the 2 nascent soul grandmasters okay? Li Yang answered first, Don't worry, martial uncle. The two nascent soul grandmasters escaped in time, but they were both slightly injured. Emotinga and Qin Shi were mentally prepared for this, so they didn't take it seriously and just asked, "Are they okay now?" Unexpectedly, Liang asked, "Martial uncle, did the people of Tiandao sect tell you that Grandmaster Jinghe was slightly injured and Grandmaster Huayan was seriously injured?" "Yes." Emotinga raised her eyebrows and looked at Qin Shi. From what he said, could it be that the information was inaccurate? Wu sighed and said, "Martial Uncle Qingwei, Grandmaster Shoujing, those words were actually released for others to hear. But the truth isn't like that. Grandmaster Huayan's injuries weren't that serious. Not only was his life not in danger, but he also didn't lose his cultivation level. I reckon he's recovered after 10 years of healing." Emotinga raised her eyebrows and asked, "What about Grandmaster Jinghe? Is he okay?" Sure enough, Wu De continued to say, "Grandmaster Jinghe's situation isn't good. In fact, Grandmaster Jinghe tried his best to escape from Demonic Mountain with Grandmaster Huayan. Before we left, we heard that Grandmaster Jinghe was still in closed-door meditation to heal his injuries. I don't know how he's doing." Emotinga and Qin Shi exchanged a look and frowned, lost in thought. It turned out that the one who was seriously injured was their master, and the information circulating outside was false. This wasn't difficult to understand. Although Xianqing School had 6 nascent soul cultivators, there was only one in the late stage and one in the middle stage. Lord Taoist Jinghe's cultivation level was in the peak of the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, and his fighting strength wasn't inferior to that of a cultivator in the late stage. Needless to say, the existence of such a Lord Taoist meant to Xianqing School, with the loss of Tiandao sect's strength and Xianqing School possibly becoming the #1 sect in the celestial pole, this news was naturally concealed. Thinking up to this point, the two of them couldn't help but worry. Master was in the peak of the middle stage of the nascent soul realm now, but he was seriously injured. Would he be unable to advance to the late stage of the nascent soul realm because of this? Wu De and Li Yang were observing their expressions. Upon seeing the worried expressions on their faces, they immediately said, "Martial Uncle and Grandmaster don't need to worry too much. Although we can be considered core disciples of our school, we're only 2 small foundation-building cultivators. If Grandmaster Jinghe's life is really in danger, it'll be top-secret information, and he won't let us know about it." "That's right. Clear Spring Peak has been prosperous these years. I heard Grandmaster Jinghe occasionally receives disciples, so it's obviously nothing serious." After thinking for a while, Qin Shi nodded and finally said, "What you said is reasonable." Wu De and Li Yang were overjoyed to be praised by a nascent soul grandmaster, so they complimented Qin Shi again. Emotinga was worried, but also felt it was funny. Putting aside the matter about Lord Taoist Jinghe for the time being, Emotinga asked, "Since you know so much about the school, do you know a foundation-building disciple named Yizhenji?" "Yizhenji?" Li Yang asked. "Martial Uncle, are you talking about Grandmaster Shoujing's inner disciple, your nephew?" Emotinga didn't expect Li Yang would remember him as soon as she said his name. She was pleasantly surprised. "Do you really know him?" Li Yang shook his head. "Senior Martial Brother Yi is an elite disciple among elite disciples. We're just deacons of the steward's hall, and we often run errands outside. How could we know him? We've only seen him before." "Oh, then do you know his situation? Did he come back from his experiential learning?" Wuda took over the conversation and said with a smile, "Speaking of this, it's also interesting." Emotinga was stunned. "What happened?" Li Yang rushed to say. "Senior Martial Brother Yi disappeared for more than 10 years, and there was no news about him. Unexpectedly, one year, news suddenly came from Kuanzhong City that an individual cultivator, named Wanderer Bayu, was killed by 2 foundation-building cultivators. After that, our branch in Kuanzhong City received news from Senior Martial Brother Yi. Wanderer Bayu?" Emotinga and Qin Shi exchanged glances. Both of them had astonishment in their eyes. Seeing that Emotinga was confused, Qin Shi said, "Wanderer Bayu is also a member of the Individual Cultivators Alliance in Kuanzhong City. He's more than 400 years old and has a youthful appearance. Reportedly, He specializes in dual cultivation. I once guessed that the person old Tong said he wanted you to exchange heavenly aromatic beans for chalcedony was Wanderer by you. Correct. Li Yang continued. Grandmaster Shoujing is really experienced and knowledgeable. Wanderer Baiyu is an individual cultivator in the core formation realm from Kuanzhong City. According to the senior martial brothers I met, he's obviously an old man, but he looks like a youngster. Moreover, he's fastidious like a woman. His reputation isn't very good. Many people say he uses the plucking technique to maintain his youth. Mo Tiange nodded. What happened to Jinji in the end? Wu De continued. Speaking of which, senior martial brother Yi was really unlucky. When he traveled to Kuanzhong City, he accidentally saved a woman. As it turned out, that woman was the human furnace that Wanderer Baiyu fancied, so he captured her as well. Fortunately, due to senior martial brother Ye's identity, Wanderer Baiyu didn't dare to kill him. In order to protect that woman, the two of them were imprisoned by Wanderer Baiyu for more than 10 years. After listening to the whole story, Mo Tiange was shocked at first, then she became furious. This Wanderer Baiyu, how dare he? He actually dared to imprison a disciple of Xianqing school. Who said he didn't? Later on, I don't know what method senior martial brother Yi used, but he actually killed Wanderer Baiyu, a realm above him, and only then did he escape. Li Yang shook his head and said, according to the senior martial brothers in Kuanzhong City's branch, when senior martial brother Yi and that woman escaped, both of them were tortured beyond recognition. What happened next? Qin Shi frowned and asked. Wanderer Baiyu imprisoned a disciple of Xianqing school. Did the school deal with him? Of course. Knowing this Grandmaster Shoujing only had one inner disciple, Li Yang hastily said. As soon as senior martial brother Yi returned to Mount Taikong, the whole school was shocked. Grandmaster Jinghe personally gave the order and almost massacred the Individual Cultivators Alliance in Kuanzhong City. At that time, this matter shook Kunwu, and the Individual Cultivators Alliance was exterminated overnight. Later, Grandmaster Jinghe calmed down and agreed to let the irrelevant people go. Now, the Individual Cultivators Alliance in Kuanzhong City has already been reorganized. Mo Tiange and Qin Shi finally felt their anger dissipate. If Wanderer Baiyu was still alive, the two of them would have immediately killed their way to Kuanzhong City. Zhenji was their only disciple, but he was almost tortured to death by someone else. Just thinking about it made Mo Tiange and Qin Shi furious. Since Wanderer Baiyu cultivated the art of plucking and was a member of the Individual Cultivators Alliance, he was most likely the old friend Tong Tianyan mentioned. She and Tong Tianyan made an agreement to obtain heavenly aromatic beans from Demonic Mountain in exchange for 1,000-year-old chalcedony. If she met Wanderer Baiyu before that, Jinji probably wouldn't have suffered so much. Fortunately, Jinji escaped. Otherwise, she really would have regretted it for the rest of her life. Chapter 316. Worried about the two foundation-building disciples, Qin Shi and Mo Tiange spent 7 days to reach Xianqing school. As soon as they approached Mount Taikong, Mo Tiange saw several nascent Soul Lord Taoists and dozens of core formation masters in the air from a distance. She looked at Qin Shi suspiciously. What's going on? Qin Shi didn't understand what was going on either, but Wu De and Li Yang answered with a smile. Of course, to welcome Grandmaster Shoujing. Ha! Both of them were stunned. Several nascent Soul Lord Taoists and dozens of core formation cultivators actually came to welcome a nascent soul cultivator. The leader was even the head Grand Supreme Elder, Lord Taoist Jinyang. This was too grand. Even when Master returned to the mountain, he didn't have this kind of extravagance. While they were in a daze, Lord Taoist Jinyang led a huge crowd to welcome them and greeted them with a smile from afar. Shoujing, you're back. Qin Shi regained his composure and respectfully saluted Lord Taoist Jinyang. Martial Uncle Jinyang. Then he saluted the several nascent Soul Lord Taoists. Martial Uncles. Lord Taoist Jinyang chuckled. No need, no need. Today is the last time you'll call me Martial Uncle. From now on, you'll have to call me Senior Brother or Senior Sister. Qin Shi smiled and didn't stand on ceremony. Since he had formed his nascent soul, He was naturally the Grand Supreme Elder and Lord Taoist Shojing from now on. So he naturally had to change the way he addressed him. After he finished saluting, the core formation cultivators also saluted him. Greetings, Martial Uncle Shojing. Dozens of core formation cultivators saluted him at the same time. Mo Tiange was shocked by the scene in front of her. Not long ago, she had to call these people martial uncles, but in the blink of an eye, they had to call Qin Shi martial uncle. Although they didn't have to call her martial uncle, she and Qin Shi were husband and wife, so they still regarded her as an elder. Of course, the fact that she and Qin Shi had become dual cultivation partners wouldn't be made public until she reported it to Master. Qin Shi was calm. He still smiled and said to these people, "No need to be so polite." Then he turned to Lord Taoist Jinyang. "Martial Uncle Jinyang, I haven't heard from you for 10 years, so I've made you worry about me. I'm really ashamed." Lord Taoist Jinyang said with a smile. "What shame? For the past 10 years, you were trapped in a dangerous place like Demonic Mountain. Not only did you manage to escape in the end, but you also formed your nascent soul and greatly raised the prestige of Xianqing School. Welcoming you today is what we ought to do." Qin Shi was speechless. He'd always been low-key and wasn't good at interacting with people. Lord Taoist Jinyang being so cautious about this matter made him feel uneasy, even though he thought highly of him. Lord Taoist Miaoi noticed his uneasiness, so she immediately said to Lord Taoist Jinyang with a smile, "Senior Martial Brother Jinyang, Shojing just came back, so I'm afraid he's tired. Why don't you let him rest first? We can talk about this later." "All right." Lord Taoist Jinyang patted his head and said with a smile, "Shojing, you two can go back to Clear Spring Peak to rest and see your master. Junior Martial Brother Jinghe will definitely be very happy to see you two back." Lord Taoist Jinyang had always been steady, but today, he was so happy that he almost fainted. Seeing this, Mo Tiange was secretly amused. In fact, the point wasn't that Qin Shi formed his nascent soul, but that he formed his nascent soul at the right time. Although Xianqing School's nascent soul cultivators weren't as good as Tiandao sects, they were young and had great potential. However, they were always suppressed by Tiandao sect in terms of numbers and strength. Coincidentally, the last time Demonic Mountain opened, Tiandao sect lost a nascent soul cultivator, and its reputation declined. Qin Shi forming his nascent soul at this time not only greatly raised the prestige of Xianqing School, but also made the number of nascent soul cultivators in Xianqing School finally catch up with Tiandao sect. In that case, everyone would calculate that in another 1 or 200 years, Tiandao sect would lose 1 or 2 nascent soul cultivators, and Xianqing School would fully deserve to be the number 1 sect in the Celestial Pole. The number 1 sect in the Celestial Pole wasn't just a title. The benefits it brought were obvious. First of all, it was attractive to cultivators. Many cultivators would come because of the reputation of the number 1 sect in the Celestial Pole, and they could choose the best disciples. With the best disciples, their development potential would be greater than that of other cultivation groups, and the sect would continue to prosper. As the head Grand Supreme Elder of Xianqing School, Lord Taoist Jinyang had lived for more than 1,000 years and struggled for the sect's affairs for several hundred years. Now that he was in charge and Xianqing School had a chance to become the number 1 sect in the Celestial Pole, how could he not be happy? Then he gave them a few words of encouragement. Even Wu De and Li Yang, who followed them back, also benefited from the head Grand Supreme Elder's praise. They were so excited that they almost fainted. The two of them felt helpless. After a long time, they finally escaped and returned to Clear Spring Peak. As soon as they arrived at Clear Spring Peak, several senior martial brothers and sisters welcomed them with their disciples. They spent some time chatting about some things before they were finally allowed to go to Shangqing Palace. Greetings to Grandmaster Shojing, Martial Uncle Qingwei. Once they entered Shangqing Palace, a maid immediately came to greet them. Mo Tiange swept her gaze around. Lord Taoist Jinghe wasn't in the hall. "Where's your grandmaster?" Qin Shi asked. Mame bowed and answered on behalf of the maids. "Grandmaster's in the closed-door meditation room." Lord Daoist Jingha's cultivation level was extremely high, so he wasn't afraid of being disturbed when he cultivated. So he always sat in the hall and cultivated. But now, he was in closed-door meditation room, because he was seriously injured. Qinshi nodded. I see. You can go now. Yes. The maids respectfully saluted him again, then went to do their own things. Qinshi looked back at Emotinga. It seems Master's injuries are really serious. He's actually in the closed-door meditation room. Emotinga nodded silently. Ever since she entered the sect, she had never seen Lord Daoist Jingha enter the closed-door meditation room. Even if he said he wanted to cultivate, he only laid a restriction in the hall. She had only heard of that closed-door meditation room, but she had never been there. Let's go and take a look first. I hope Master's fine. Qinshi sighed softly and led Emotinga out of the hall. After several turns, they finally stopped in front of an inconspicuous stone room. Upon seeing this stone room, Emotinga felt this was a real cultivation place for middle-stage nascent soul cultivators. There weren't any unnecessary decorations, and there were only many restrictions. Unfortunately, Lord Daoist Jingha had very few opportunities to use it. Stopping in front of the stone room, Qinshi sighed again and said, The last time Master entered the closed-door meditation room was when I just entered the sect. At that time, Master hadn't reached the peak of the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, so he often entered closed-door meditation room. Later, when he reached the peak of the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, he didn't have any fated chances, so he cultivated less and tried to break through his mental state. I didn't expect this would happen the next time he used the closed-door meditation room. He put his palms together, quickly made a set of hand seals, and hit the door of the stone room. The stone room moved slightly. After a while a voice came from inside. Is it Xia? The voice sounded a little old. Emotinga and Qinshi looked at each other, and saw shock in each other's eyes. Qinshi answered, Yes, Master. Tienga and I are back. After a while, the door to the stone room slowly opened with a loud bang. As the stone door moved, they saw Lord Daoist Jingha sitting on the stone bed inside the stone room. He was still wearing a golden crown and luxurious clothes, and he still looked noble, but his black hair had turned white. Master! The two of them called out in unison. They walked forward tremblingly, knelt in front of the stone bed, and looked up at Lord Daoist Jingha. Not only had his hair turned white, but his eyebrows and beard had also lost their color. There were fine wrinkles at the corners of his eyes and forehead, and the muscles at the corners of his mouth had softened. Lord Daoist Jingha originally looked like he was in his 30s or 40s, but now he looked like he was in his 50s. What kind of injury could have caused him to age so much in 10 years? Master, why did you? Emotinga couldn't finish her words. Although this master always annoyed her, she knew he was good to her. In this life, except for her dead mother and second uncle, no one else loved her as much as he did. Seeing her master like this, she felt as if someone was clutching her heart. Lord Daoist Jingha looked up and swept his gaze over the two disciples kneeling in front of him. He smiled slightly. Don't worry, I won't die. After saying that, his gaze fell on Qinshi, and he showed a gratified smile. You finally formed your nascent soul. Qinshi looked up, grasped Lord Daoist Jingha's hand tightly, and said hoarsely, Master, how are your injuries? If you have any methods or medicinal pills you need, just tell us. We'll definitely do it for you. Right. Emotinga remembered if her master's injuries could be cured with medicinal pills, she didn't lack them at all. Master, tell me, no matter what kind of medicinal pills I need, it's fine as long as there's hope. Alas! Lord Daoist Jingha sighed softly, and stroked her head, as if she was still a child. You don't have to be like this. If you need medicinal pills, are you afraid your martial uncle Jinyang won't get them for me? Although Master is seriously injured, he's fine for the time being. We'll talk about this later. By the way, what do you want to tell Master? Upon hearing this, Qinshi's eyes reddened. He took Emotinga's hand and said cautiously, Master, Tinga and I were trapped on Demonic Mountain for the past 10 years. I formed my nascent soul, and became husband and wife with Tinga. So I didn't report it to Master at that time. I hope Master can forgive me. Lord Daoist Jinghe smiled. It was a gentle and kind smile that had never been seen before. He looked at his two most beloved disciples and said softly, "I'm more than happy that you two became husband and wife. You don't have to apologize." He looked at Qin Shi and asked, Since you formed your nascent soul and performed dual cultivation with Tiange, the knot in your heart must have been resolved, and the demon barrier must have disappeared, right?" Qin Shi said in a low voice, "Yes." Disciple didn't listen to Master's advice before and made Master worry. Lord Daoist Jinghe nodded with a smile. "It's good that you understand." He then turned to Emo Tiange. "Tiange, what about you? Do you have any worries or obsessions in your heart now?" "No," Emo Tiange answered softly. "Rest assured, Master. Senior martial brother and I have been honest with each other. Those misunderstandings and obsessions no longer exist." "That's good." Lord Daoist Jinghe paused for a while and said, "You disappeared for 10 years, but Master always believed you'd come back. Today, you finally didn't let me down." Both Emo Tiange and Qin Shi felt their hearts tremble. Lord Daoist Jinghe sighed again. "You two, forget it. It's good that you're back. Since you've become husband and wife, you should cultivate well. Master will continue his closed-door meditation. If you have nothing to do, you don't have to disturb me. Master still wants to recover from his injuries and advance to the late stage of the nascent soul realm." Chapter 317. When they came out of Lord Daoist Jinghe's closed-door meditation room, both Emo Tiange and Qin Shi were in a heavy mood. After walking a bit further, they stopped by the railing at the same time. "Tiange," Qin Shi called out. He wanted to say something but hesitated. Emo Tiange smiled and sighed. She hugged his waist and said softly, "I know what you want to say. Don't worry. If there's anything in the virtual sky world that Master can use, I won't be stingy." Qin Shi was moved when he heard what she said. He said gratefully, "Thank you for saying that." "What are you thanking me for?" Emo Tiange chuckled. "He's your master and also my master. In this world, no one treats me better than him except you." Qin Shi didn't say anything and just hugged her tightly. He knew that although she had the indifference and decisiveness a cultivator should have, she was also a person who valued relationships. She would always remember who treated her well, and if there was a chance in the future, she would pay them back double. They both knew their master's injury was very serious, but it wasn't like there was no way. With the spiritual plants in the virtual sky world, and Qin Shi's knowledge of many pill recipes, Martial Uncle Xinjiang might not have seen all of those pills. "Later, let's study what medicinal pills can be used to heal Master," Emo Tiange said softly. "And," Qin Shi answered. This was the only thing they could do for their master right now. In their divine senses, a foundation-building cultivator was walking towards them, but they didn't move. There were only maids in Shangqing Palace, and these maids didn't dare to disturb them. However, when the man saw them, he called out, "Auntie! Master!" The voice sounded very surprised. Hearing this voice, the two of them hurriedly separated. They saw Yi Jinji standing not far away, looking at them with tears almost falling from his eyes. Yi Jinji wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes and murmured, "You're finally back. I knew you'd definitely come back." Emo Tiange recalled what Wu Da and Li Yang said happened to him all these years. Seeing his haggard face, she felt sorry for him. Although Jinji wasn't her disciple, she brought him up. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he was her son. "Jinji, why did you lose so much weight?" She grasped Yi Jinji's pulse, then probed his body with her true aura. However, she discovered that he wasn't injured at all. Furthermore, the spiritual aura inside his body was stable. He was already in the middle stage of the foundation-building realm. Upon hearing her question, Yi Jinji unexpectedly lowered his head and started to cry. Back then, when he lacked experience and his character was a bit weak, he never cried. Today, however, Emo Tiange and Qin Shi were startled. The first thing Emo Tiange thought about was the imprisonment Wu Da and Li Yang mentioned. During those 10-odd years, did he suffer inhumane torture? Seeing them all of a sudden was why he felt so wronged? Qin Shi sighed and asked, "What made you so sad?" Yi Jinji wiped away his tears, then looked up and said, Master, auntie, please save Linbua. Please help me save Linbua. Emo Tienga and Qin Shi looked at each other. Both of them were confused. Linbua. Then the two of them remembered that Yi Jinji was trapped by Master Daoist Baiyu precisely because of a woman. Could it be this Linbua? Thinking up to this point, the two of them pondered inwardly. Could it be that Jinji has some sort of relationship with this woman? Yi Jinji said, Linbua, come with me. I'll tell you slowly. As he led them, Yi Jinji first asked them if they had been all right in the past 10 years. When he learned that they had become husband and wife, he was quite happy. Presumably, he had figured it out in the past few years. Then he talked about his experiences in the past few years, which were not different from what Wu Da and Li Yang said. He was indeed imprisoned by Wanderer Baiyu. Before he left, Qin Shi was worried and gave him several magic talismans to protect himself. During those 10-odd years, Yi Jinji pretended to be incompetent and suffered a lot to numb Wanderer Baiyu. In the end, when Wanderer Baiyu was unprepared, he killed him with magic talismans. After listening to this, Emo Tienga and Qin Shi were quite surprised. Although they both loved Yi Jinji, they always thought he was a little weak and couldn't be a great person. They didn't expect him to have such scheming and perseverance when he was in danger. It seemed it was the right decision to let him go out to gain experience. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to stimulate his potential. The Linbua he mentioned was called Shui Linbua. She was originally from the Eastern Sea. The Eastern Sea had been in chaos for several decades. She was lucky and accidentally found a way to cross Demonic Mountain and come to Kunwu. Her aptitude wasn't good, so she couldn't enter those cultivation sections. As a woman, she struggled to cultivate in Kunwu. Later, she unexpectedly had a fated chance and advanced to the foundation-building realm. She was a foundation-building female cultivator without a backer. Although her aptitude wasn't good, she was a human furnace desired by many cultivators. Wanderer Baiyu took a fancy to her just like that in Kuanzhong City. Coincidentally, on the day Wanderer Baiyu tried to capture her, Yi Jinji passed by and was mistakenly thought to be Shui Linbua's accomplice, so he was captured together with her. Later, Wanderer Baiyu discovered Yi Jinji's identity. Although he knew he had captured the wrong person, he didn't dare to let Yi Jinji go. He was worried that Yi Jinji would hold a grudge against him, but he also didn't dare to kill him. He was worried that Yi Jinji might have left something like a natal lamp behind. If Yi Jinji was tracked down, Wanderer Baiyu wouldn't have a good ending. Therefore, he imprisoned Yi Jinji in a place and trapped him with layers of restrictions to prevent others from tracking him. Shui Linbua used some kind of technique to make Wanderer Baiyu mistakenly think she had lost her primordial yin. So she was also imprisoned. She was a loyal person. Seeing that she had implicated Yi Jinji, she protected him all these years, saving him a lot of suffering. Because of this, she suffered more than Yi Jinji. When she escaped, her injuries were already too serious to heal. Unfortunately, after Yi Jinji brought her back, Emo Tienga and Qin Shi weren't there. Lord Daoist Jinghe was seriously injured and in closed-door meditation, so he didn't have time to take care of himself. Although Shui Linbua's life was saved for the time being, no one could cure her injuries. After hearing this, Emo Tienga and Qin Shi looked at each other. Both of them had a plan in their minds. Since the two of them went through trials and tribulations together, they must have developed feelings for each other, which was why Jinji was so excited. Emo Tienga sighed inwardly. It turned out Jinji had also grown up and had a sweetheart. Jinji, Emo Tienga asked, don't you have the healing medicinal pills auntie gave you? She didn't get better after taking them. Yi Jinji shook his head dejectedly. After we were caught, my Qianquan bag was searched. Fortunately, I was careful and secretly hid some things. Later, I killed Wanderer Baiyu, but I didn't get them back. I didn't even get the magic tools Master and Auntie gave me. It's fine. Qin Shi comforted him. Master can refine more magic tools for you. Yi Jinji smiled and whispered, thank you, Master. After a pause, he continued. Later, I finally got in touch with the senior martial brothers of the branch in Kuanzhong City, and they sent me and Linbua back. When Grandmaster heard about it, he specially summoned Martial Uncle Mingjin. Martial Uncle Mingjin went to Kuanzhong City and destroyed the Individual Cultivators Alliance. Mingjin was Lord Taoist Jinghe's third disciple and one of his first 3 disciples. He had been in the core formation realm for more than 200 years and was now in the late stage of the core formation realm. He was skilled and powerful. Although the Individual Cultivators Alliance also had several core formation cultivators, the strongest ones, Taoist Kumu and Tong Tianyan, died on Demonic Mountain, and Wanderer Baiyu was killed by Yi Jinji. The remaining ones were definitely not Mingjin's match. However, although Lord Taoist Jinghe liked to kill, he rarely implicated others. Presumably, Jinji was tortured too miserably, which made him so angry. Grandmaster also gave Limbua medicinal pills, but Limbua's injuries were too serious, so he could only save her life. I know Grandmaster is also seriously injured now, so I don't dare to disturb him again. But Martial Uncle Mingjin and Grandmaster Xianin can't do anything about Limbua's injuries, so I don't know what to do. As they talked, they walked to the door of Mingxin residence. When Mo Tinga saw Jinji opening the restriction, she asked, "Do you live here now?" Yi Jinji answered. Grandmaster took pity on Limbua and liked her unyielding character, so he let her stay. He said Mingxin residence has calm spiritual aura and is suitable for healing, so he let her live here. In order to take care of Limbua, I usually live here. His expression was sad but calm, and his smiling baby face also looked a bit more stable, which made Mo Tinga feel very gratified. "You've grown up, Jinji." Yi Jinji smiled. "Auntie, I'm almost 80 years old. I should have grown up long ago." Mo Tinga also smiled. Jinji was much taller than her, and now he looked more mature than her. He was indeed no longer the child who always relied on her. Nothing in Mingxin residence had changed. When Mo Tinga moved away, she only took daily necessities with her. Now, even the furnishings hadn't changed. Yi Jinji led them all the way to the lounge, opened the restriction and called softly, "Linbua?" Mo Tinga and Qin followed him inside. In the small lounge, the originally cold jade bed was now covered with a layer of soft fur. A haggard young woman sat cross-legged on the bed with her eyes closed, seemingly healing her injuries. As soon as Mo Tinga saw her expression, she knew her dantian and meridians were injured. Then, she saw that the spiritual aura all over her body was faintly discernible and often scattered. She speculated that her meridians were riddled with holes and couldn't retain spiritual aura at all. She stepped forward, gently took the woman's hand, and carefully probed her spiritual aura. Sure enough, her speculation was confirmed. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have believed that a cultivator's meridians were injured to this extent, and her dantian was also damaged. If it weren't for the medicinal power settling in her dantian, she would have died long ago. "Auntie, how is it?" Yi Jinji was a little anxious, but he was afraid of disturbing Shui Limbua, so he asked softly. Mo Tinga sighed and looked at Qin Shi. "It's very serious. No wonder senior martial brother Mingjin and martial uncle Xianin couldn't do anything about it." Upon hearing that, Qin Shi also stepped forward to probe the woman's meridians and also frowned. Looking at their expressions, Yi Jinji couldn't care about anything else and begged, "Auntie Master, please think of a way, think of a way." "Don't worry," Mo Tinga said. "As long as there's a way, I'll definitely help you, but you have to cheer up." Upon hearing her comfort, Yi Jinji showed a determined expression. "Auntie, rest assured, no matter what happens in the end, I won't give up hope." Mo Tinga smiled and nodded. Since Jinji was begging her, she would certainly try her best. Moreover, this woman came from the Eastern Sea, so she might be related to Bishuan court. This could also be considered a bit of a connection with her. Chapter 318. At this time, Shui Limbua finally opened her eyes. The first person she saw was Yi Jinji, and she asked softly, "Why are you here again? Aren't you going to cultivate?" There was a hint of reproach in her tone, which reminded Mo Tinga that she used to urge Yi Jinji to cultivate like this, and she couldn't help but smile. Yi Jinji stepped forward, sat down beside her and said softly, "Limbua, my aunt and master finally came back safely. Come and see them. Shui Limbua seemed to notice that there was someone else in the room. Even though Emotienga and Qin had restrained their auras, they were, after all, a core formation cultivator and a nascent soul cultivator. She didn't feel anything at all, so her divine sense must have been seriously injured to be so slow. She raised her head curiously, glanced at Qin, and then fixed her eyes on Emotienga's face. This made Emotienga feel interested. Any woman, whether mortal or cultivator, would look at Qin's face when they saw the two of them. She didn't expect this woman to just glance at him and then stare at her face. Emotienga guessed that if this woman didn't have an extremely good state of mind and didn't care about beauty or ugliness, then she must be very scheming. But the next moment, Shui Limbua's reaction overturned her guess. Shui Limbua's skinny, bloodless face was slightly flushed, and her expression gradually became excited. She didn't even care about etiquette and shouted at Emotienga, "Fairy, are you a fairy?" Not only were Emotienga and Qin stunned, but even Yi Jinji was stunned. He asked her strangely, "What fairy? Limbua, what did you say?" Shui Limbua stared at Emotienga expectantly and said, 58 years ago, on the coast of the East Sea, Anan of the Shui family. Fairy, do you still remember?" Emotienga was stunned, and the image of a little girl with a sallow face and hopeful eyes gradually emerged in her mind. 58 years ago, on the coast of the East Sea, she gave a little girl an ordinary cultivation technique and let her embark on the path to immortality. "It's you. You're really a fairy." Shui Limbua cried tears of joy and then struggled to get up and kneel. "Fairy, thank you for giving me the book. If it weren't for you, there would be no Shui Limbua today. Get up first." Emotienga gently raised her hand, and an invisible spiritual aura pushed Shui Limbua back to the bed. He looked at Shui Limbua in disbelief, and then at Emotienga. "Limbua, is my aunt the fairy who gave you the cultivation technique?" Shui Limbua nodded and said happily, "So this fairy is your aunt? No wonder I always felt that Xianqing School's clothes were very similar to fairies." At that time, she was only 8 years old, so she could only vaguely remember many things. She could only roughly remember Emotienga's appearance. If it wasn't for the fact that Emotienga's appearance hadn't changed all these years, and her clothes were still the same as before, she probably wouldn't have recognized her. Emotienga originally thought that since this female cultivator came from the Eastern Sea, they might have some kind of relationship, but she never expected that their relationship would be so deep. Back then, it was just something he did casually, but who would have thought that it would create a foundation-building female cultivator today? Moreover, she even had a close relationship with Jinji. It could be seen that there were indeed coincidences in this world. Shui Limbua didn't mention such a trivial matter back then, so Qin also didn't know. Seeing their expressions, he asked Emotienga, "What's wrong? Is she your old friend?" Emotienga nodded and smiled. "I also didn't expect it to be so coincidental. Back then, I was ordered by my master to travel and arrived at the coast of Donglin. This child has spiritual roots. Back then her parents begged me, so I gave her a cultivation technique. I really didn't expect her to cultivate to this level." "I see." Qin nodded. Seeing that Shui Limbua didn't know how to address Qin, Yi Jinji introduced, "Limbua, this is my master, Master Taoist Shoujing." "Oh no, my master has advanced to the nascent soul realm. He's now Lord Taoist Shoujing." Shui Limbua was startled and immediately became nervous. She had long known that Yi Jinji's identity was extraordinary. Her aunt and master were both core formation cultivators, and they were elders of a big cultivation group like Xianqing School. But she didn't expect Qin to advance to the nascent soul realm so soon. She was originally just an ordinary individual cultivator, and rarely saw core formation cultivators. It was only after she came back with Yi Jinji that she saw nascent soul cultivators. Now that she heard the person standing in front of her was a nascent soul cultivator, she was so nervous that she didn't know how to salute. In the end, Qin smiled and said, "You don't have to be nervous. Since you're Jinji's." He paused. There were some things Jinji didn't say, and it wasn't good for him to say them clearly, so he said vaguely, "Grandmaster has allowed you to stay, so you're a disciple of our Clear Spring Peak." Just call me as you should. Yes. Shui Limbua calmed down, saluted, and said respectfully, "Greetings to Grandmaster Shoujing." After the salute, Mo Tinga looked at Qin Shi. The two of them had been companions in the virtual sky world for 10 years, and they had long understood many things. Qin Shi understood what she meant, so he said with a smile, "You decide." Mo Tinga also smiled, took out a jade bottle from her robe, and gave it to Yi Zhenji. "Zhenji, we'll find a way to treat Limbua's injury. Before that, give her one pill every 3 days. After taking it, use your spiritual aura to help her heal for 4 hours." "Yes, Auntie." Mo Tinga smiled and said to them, "Your master and I just came back, and we still have other things to arrange, so we'll go back first. You can heal and cultivate as usual." "Yes," Yi Zhenji said hurriedly. "Auntie, I'll see you out." Mo Tinga raised her hand to stop him. "No need. Just watch over Limbua." She nodded at Shui Limbua with a smile, then left with Qin Shi. After leaving Shangqing Palace, the two of them had their own thoughts. They walked at the same time, one going east and the other going south. After walking about 10 steps, they realized that the other party didn't go with them, so they stopped and turned around stunned. "Why are you going that way?" After asking at the same time, they were stunned again, remembering that their caves weren't in the same place. The two of them laughed at each other, sighed, and walked together. "What should we do?" Qin Shi asked. "Should we go to your cave or mine first?" Mo Tinga said, "Let's go back to our respective caves. We haven't been back for a long time, so we have to deal with things first. We'll contact each other when we're done." Qin Shi thought about it and nodded. "Okay. Remember to send me a summoning talisman." Mo Tinga nodded, and the two of them separated and went back to their caves. Since they were married, they naturally had to live together in the future. The two of them had also discussed this matter. Qin Shi said that his cave looked inconspicuous, but it was actually located on a relatively large spiritual eye in the spirit vein of Clear Spring Peak. He also thought of many ways to enhance the spiritual aura there, and now it was not inferior to Shangqing Palaces. And the most important thing was that it was very secluded, and there were few idle people around, which suited their quiet personality. Mo Tinga's current cave was big enough, and the spiritual aura was also good, but because it was too big, there would be a lot of people to take care of it. Moreover, the two of them probably wouldn't accept many disciples, so it was better to give it to others and make the best use of it. Mo Tinga thought for a long time and agreed. Her current cave was used by Lord Daoist Xianin before he formed his nascent soul. She only lived there for 2 years, so there weren't many things, so it was convenient to move. But no matter how convenient it was, she couldn't move immediately. She still had to go back and deal with some chores. Fortunately, Xianqing School's steward's hall was very capable. She had been gone for 10 years, but the cave was still in good condition. The things that needed to be done weren't left behind at all, and the spirit stones used were all deducted from her offerings. She hadn't received offerings for 10 years, but now she received a huge sum of money all of a sudden. When she finished her business and told the steward's hall that she wanted to move to another cave, Qin Shi's summoning talisman arrived. Upon hearing that she wanted to move to Qin Shi's cave, the steward of the steward's hall was so surprised that his jaw almost dropped. Now that he saw Mo Tinga smiling after receiving the summoning talisman, his imagination began to run wild. Mo Tinga was about to reply when she sensed a nascent soul cultivator approaching. Then, Qin Shi landed on a flying cloud and walked in. She was surprised. Why did he come? She just received the summoning talisman. Qin Shi smiled. I just remembered that I was going to the spiritual beast pavilion to pick up the spiritual beast I was fostering, so I came out. Oh. After answering, Mo Tinga remembered that the steward of the steward's hall was still there, so she said to that person, "All right, I'll leave everything to you. Go do it." Yes. That person's gaze shifted back and forth between her and Qin Shi. He bowed to Qin Shi and was about to leave, but he suddenly remembered that he was no longer a core formation cultivator, so he hurriedly bowed to him and left to handle the matter. Mo Tinga stared at the steward's back and sighed. I guess he must be thinking, This martial Uncle Qingwei seems to be well-behaved, but I didn't expect her to hook up with Grandmaster Shoujing. She really doesn't show her true colors. She couldn't help but laugh when he said the last sentence in a very funny tone. Seeing him laughing, Emotinga couldn't help but laugh as well. She asked, "Are you done with your business?" She sat down next to her and put his arm around her waist out of habit. He answered, "What can happen to my small cave? I just need to ask him a few questions." Emotinga nodded. "That's true. A small cave has its own benefits." She paused for a moment then asked, "What do you think about Master's matter?" This question made Qi's smile disappear. He said, "This matter can't be rushed. We still have to go see Master in 2 days. How about this? It's not convenient to tell him about the virtual sky world, but we can show Master a few kinds of medicinal pills first, and tell him we found a lot of spiritual plants on Demonic Mountain. In this way, Master will believe we have the ability to help him, and then he'll tell us if there are medicinal pills that can treat his injury." Emotinga agreed. "What about Shui Limbua?" This question stumped Qin. "To be honest, I've never seen anyone with such a serious injury, and I don't know what to do. There are several medical cultivators in our sect who may know more about injuries. Why don't we ask them?" "Oh right." His reminder reminded Emotinga of senior martial brother Guangzhu and his family in Seoul's Retreat Peak. She'd better find time to ask them. These 2 things can't be rushed. Right now, there's one thing I have to discuss with you. She looked at her and said helplessly, "My soul formation is of special significance to the sect. So Martial Uncle Jinyang sent a message saying that we'll hold a soul formation ceremony. In addition, although we've made a blood oath and become husband and wife, we should also hold a dual cultivation ceremony." "Don't." Emotinga immediately refused. Then, seeing his puzzled look, she lowered her head and explained, "You can decide the soul formation ceremony, but can we forget about the dual cultivation ceremony? I really don't like that." She thought for a moment then nodded. "I know what you mean. I also don't like that kind of atmosphere. How about this? I'll just tell Martial Uncle Jinyang and make an announcement at the soul formation ceremony." Emotinga accepted this idea, so she didn't say anything. Chapter 319. Lord Taoist Jinyang originally planned to organize Qi's soul formation ceremony on a large scale like Lord Taoist Xianyin did last time, but Qi refused. In his opinion, since Xianqing School's reputation was flourishing day by day, and Tiandao sect was declining day by day, it would be too domineering and disagreeable for them if they still held a big event like last time. It would be better to keep a low profile. After thinking about it, Lord Taoist Jinyang accepted. Xianqing School had never been a high-profile cultivation group, so it was better for them to be a bit more modest. After Emotinga heard what he said, she laughed inwardly. In the end, it was just that he found it troublesome and didn't want to socialize with others. However, this was for the best. At that time, she would have to go out and meet people, and she was also afraid of trouble. Upon learning that Emotinga had returned safely, her friends in the school all sent her greetings through summoning talismans. Among them, Luo Fingxue even paid her a visit. Emotinga hadn't returned for 10 years, but she heard a lot of gossip from Luo Fingxue. First of all, after junior martial brother Bai Yanfei married senior martial sister Wu, he discovered that although this senior martial sister Wu was gentle and honest, she had a stubborn temper and always tried to control him, which annoyed him endlessly. However, his master Lord Taoist Jinyang also protected senior martial sister Wu, leaving him helpless. Speaking of this matter, Luo Fingxue took pleasure in junior martial brother Bai's misfortune. She rudely mocked that junior martial brother Bai deserved it. As for junior martial sister Jiang, she had been living a good life for the past few decades. Her aptitude wasn't bad in the first place. After decades of dedicated cultivation, she actually rushed from the early stage of the foundation building realm to the late stage in one go. This kind of speed was rare in the entire celestial pole. If her cultivation went smoothly in the future, she might be able to form her gold core when she was about 150 years old. As for that junior martial brother Bai, he had yet to reach the peak of foundation establishment. Seeing that junior martial sister Jiang, whom he looked down upon, had caught up to him, he wondered if he regretted it. Regarding this matter, Luo Fengxue said, "In my opinion, it's fortunate that junior martial sister Jiang didn't marry him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have the achievements she has today. It's a pity that senior sister Wu has to take care of chores for him every day. She doesn't even have much time to cultivate." Sigh. Luo Fengxue was very popular among female disciples. Since senior martial sister Wu had a gentle temperament, presumably, Luo Fengxue also had a good relationship with senior martial sister Wu. Putting this matter aside, his old friends were all doing well at the moment. During these 10 years, senior martial brother Guangzhu of Seoul's Retreat Peak had already formed his gold core. Roughly estimating, the first time Mo Tiange met him was almost 70 years ago. At that time, he was already in the late stage of the foundation building realm. His cultivation had been very smooth, and it was only a matter of time before he formed his gold core. Yi Jingwen, on the other hand, was rather pitiful. He had tried once but failed to form his gold core. However, he was still young, only a little over 100 years old, so there was no need to be anxious. They hadn't seen each other for 10 years, so Luo Fengxue spoke for a long time before leaving. In the end, Luo Fengxue mischievously congratulated Mo Tiange. "Tiange, I still haven't congratulated you. How did dual cultivation feel?" Mo Tiange was embarrassed by her laughter, so she pretended to be angry and said, "I still haven't settled the accounts with you. What senior martial brother Qin? You also cheated me." Luo Fengxue burst into laughter. "You're the one who thinks that. At most, I just didn't clarify things. I didn't lie to you." "Yes, you clearly knew I was deceived, yet you still followed along and hid it from me." Mo Tiange grunted. All right. Luo Fengxue finished laughing and put her arm around Mo Tiange's shoulder. "When martial uncle Shoujing brought you back, I knew the relationship between the two of you wasn't ordinary. But now that things have come to this, I still find it inconceivable. You're really a lucky guy." Mo Tiange also laughed. Similarly, he's also a lucky guy. Luo Fengxue was stunned, but she soon burst into laughter and patted Mo Tiange's shoulder. "All right, since you want to move your immortal's cave, I won't give you any more trouble. I'll head back first. Remember to chat with me later when you have time." Mo Tiange stood up and saw her out. After leaving her immortal's cave, Luo Fengxue flew into the air. When she looked down, she happened to see Mo Tiange welcoming Qin Shi inside. She couldn't help but sigh. It seemed second senior martial sister was going to be sad. However, when she recalled Mo Tiange saying, "He's also a lucky guy," Luo Fengxue felt that this had nothing to do with aptitude or identity. Perhaps this was where second senior martial sister was inferior to Mo Tiange? Right after Luo Fengxue left, Qin Shi came and immediately asked her, "When are you moving?" Upon hearing his impatient tone, Mo Tiange smiled. "Why are you in such a hurry? It's not like I won't move." Qin Shi said bluntly, "I miss you." Although the two of them had long been intimate, Mo Tiange still blushed when she heard this. "All right, the steward's hall has taken care of the matter, so I can go now." Qin Shi was overjoyed. He took her hand and walked away. "Let's go then." "Hey," Mo Tiange said helplessly. "There's still something else." Qin Shi widened his eyes. "Didn't you say everything was taken care of? Why is there something else?" He looked suspicious. Obviously, he thought this was just an excuse. Mo Tiange felt annoyed and amused at the same time. She said, "Why are you in such a hurry to go back? Those things will be taken care of by the steward's hall. It's not dark yet, so we can go see Master." "Oh." At the mention of Lord Taoist Jinghe, Qin Shi's suspicious expression disappeared. He asked her, "What medicinal pills should we give to Master?" Mo Tiange thought for a moment, then said, 9 Revolution Spiritual Heart Pill, Extreme Pure Golden Pill, Tai Pulse Moistening Pill. All of these are fine. In addition, we'll also bring 2 flowerless golden fruits. Flowerless golden fruits wither soon after they're picked. Isn't this a bit hard to explain? Mo Tiange smiled. What's hard to explain? You're already a nascent soul cultivator. It shouldn't be a problem for you to preserve them for a year or so, right? Qin thought for a moment then nodded. You're right. If we surround the flowerless golden fruits with a large amount of spiritual aura and seal them with special talismans, they won't be preserved for a long time, but they'll be fine for a year or so. After that, the two of them entered the virtual sky world to prepare. There were 2 flowerless golden trees inside the virtual sky world. One of them was bearing fruit, which was useful for cultivators above the nascent soul realm. Emotienga was still in the core formation realm, and Qin had just reached the nascent soul realm, so they hadn't picked it yet. These 2 flowerless golden trees were tens of thousands of years old. They were relatively long-lived spiritual trees that bore fruit once every 100 years, and only a few fruits would be born each time. They carefully picked them and put them in jade boxes. Qin also used some methods to seal the spiritual aura. Soon after, the 2 of them left the virtual sky world and went to Shangqing Palace together. Lord Taoist Jinghe was still in the closed-door meditation room, and this time, Lord Taoist Jinyang was also present. Upon seeing them, Lord Taoist Jinyang smiled kindly. Shoujing Qingwei, why are you here? The soul formation ceremony hadn't been held yet, but just like Tienga, Qin still called out, Martial Uncle Jinyang. Okay, you don't have to be so polite. They were only halfway through their greetings when Lord Taoist Jinyang lifted them up. The happiest person about Qin's soul formation was actually Lord Taoist Jinyang. Emotienga and Qin, she stood up then greeted Lord Taoist Jinghe. Master. Lord Taoist Jinghe was in good spirits today, so he said with a smile, stand up. I've never seen the 2 of you so polite before. You're indeed different after getting married. Upon hearing his teasing, Emotienga felt relieved. Apparently, Master's condition today wasn't bad. He even knew how to joke. Before they arrived, the 2 nascent soul Downlords were talking about something. After Emotienga and Qin took their seats, Lord Taoist Jinyang was the first to ask, Shoujing Qingwei, what brings you here? Qin answered, we came to see Master's condition and ask if there's anything we can help with. Oh, I see. Lord Taoist Jinyang nodded, feeling quite gratified. You're very considerate. Your master's injury won't threaten his life, so you don't have to worry about it. Yes. Qin looked at Lord Taoist Jinghe and asked, Martial Uncle Jinyang, are there any medicinal pills that can treat master's injury? There are several kinds of medicinal pills, but the spiritual plants they need are really hard to find. Alas, there are very few natural treasures in the world nowadays. Cultivators above the nascent soul realm can hardly take medicinal pills. In the past 10 years, we've only concocted a few healing medicinal pills. Upon hearing this, Emotienga and Qin exchanged glances. Qin took out 2 jade boxes from his Qingquan bag and said to the 2 of them, Master, Martial Uncle Jinyang, Tienga and I benefited from a disaster on Demonic Mountain this time. We obtained some treasures. Take a look and see if they're useful for Master's injury. Oh, the 2 Lord Taoists looked quite surprised. They knew Qin's vision. The treasures, he said, must be precious. Lord Taoist Jinyang took the boxes and heard Qin say, here are some medicinal pills. We obtained some spiritual plants, and the ones that weren't suitable to be preserved were refined into medicinal pills. Here are 3 flowerless golden fruits. Fortunately, I formed my nascent soul. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to bring them back. Flowerless golden fruits. The 2 Lord Taoists were shocked and glanced at each other. Lord Taoist Jinyang put the box of medicinal pills aside. Seeing that the jade box was full of spiritual aura, he carefully peeled off the complicated talisman on it. After the box was opened, the 2 Lord Taoists immediately gasped. Inside the jade box were 3 golden fruits. The skin of the fruits was gold without any impurities. As soon as the box was opened, they smelled a sweet grass-like fragrance. Flowerless golden fruits. Lord Taoist Jinghe took a deep breath and murmured, yes, these are flowerless golden fruits. Judging from their color, that flowerless golden tree is at least 10,000 years old, right? Nascent soul cultivators were nascent soul cultivators after all. They could determine the age of the flowerless golden fruits at a glance. Lord Daoist Jinyang looked for a long time before he sighed, and turned to ask Qin Shi, "Where's the flowerless golden tree you found? Do you remember its location?" Qin Shi shook his head and said, "Everything changed after the changes on Demonic Mountain. Tienga and I met it by chance when we were lost. The terrain there was very special. We went back to look for it, but we couldn't find it no matter what." A place like Demonic Mountain couldn't be speculated with common sense, so Qin Shi wouldn't be exposed even if he lied casually. Sure enough, Lord Daoist Jinyang didn't doubt him. He just sighed regretfully. Qin Shi asked again, "Martial Uncle Jinyang, is this thing useful for Master's injury?" Lord Daoist Jingha answered with a smile, "Of course it's useful. Cultivators below the nascent soul realm can't bear the spiritual aura of flowerless golden fruits, but for nascent soul cultivators, one fruit is equivalent to several years of rest." Not bad. Lord Daoist Jinyang looked at the 3 fruits with eyes full of reluctance. It was also rare for him to see such spiritual objects. With these 3 fruits, your master's recovery time can be reduced by at least 30 years. Mo Tienga and Qin Shi glanced at each other. They were very happy. "Martial Uncle Jinyang, take a look at these medicinal pills again. Are they useful for Master?" Grandmaster Shoujing's cultivation level is so high that I'm nervous when I see him. Besides, since that incident, I've been afraid to see men. "Oh, I see." Mo Tienga nodded to show her understanding. She couldn't help but feel a little sympathy for Shui Linbua. In order to escape the fate of being a human furnace, she had disguised herself as a man and didn't dare to reveal her true identity. Mo Tienga regained her train of thought and asked again, "You're not afraid of Jinji?" Shui Linbua's eyes flickered, and she lowered her eyes and said, "I implicated him that day, but he didn't care and even suffered so much for me. Why would I be afraid of him?" Mo Tienga saw that although Shui Linbua tried to stay calm, her hands were trembling a little. She smiled and asked straightforwardly, "Do you like Jinji?" Shui Linbua trembled and raised her head. Surprise flashed in her eyes, but she slowly calmed down and answered, "I like him." Her answer was straightforward, which made Mo Tienga like her even more. She continued to ask, "Then do you want to be with him?" This question made Shui Linbua fall silent. After a while she said, "Martial Uncle Qingwei, I know I'm not talented and seriously injured, so I'm not a good match for Jinji. Before I recover, I don't want to think about this problem." Hearing this, Mo Tienga was stunned and couldn't help but recall that she also had such a self-harming thought. However, she was different from Shui Linbua. She thought that with Qin Shi's identity, she didn't have much hope, but she never thought she didn't deserve him. Of course, Shui Linbua's experience was different from hers. Even if there were similarities, they couldn't think the same way. Seeing that she didn't speak, Shui Linbua felt a little uneasy. After a while she said, "Martial Uncle, I understand. Jinji is your nephew, and the disciple of a nascent soul cultivator. He's not someone I can match." That's not what I mean." Mo Tienga interrupted her and said with a smile, "I won't meddle in the affairs between you and Jinji. It's his freedom to choose whoever he wants. I believe he doesn't need a Dao companion with good aptitude to help him cultivate." Shui Linbua's eyes widened when she heard this. "You mean," Mo Tienga continued, "I came to see you today for 2 reasons. One is to see your injury, and the other is to hear about you. After all, Jinji likes you, so I also want to know more about you." She smiled and asked, "Would you like to tell me?" Shui Linbua was stunned for a long time before she reacted. "Oh, of course, of course." She calmed down and began to speak slowly. "Back then, Martial Uncle Qingwei passed by Linhai and gave me a cultivation technique manual, so I embarked on the path to immortality. I didn't have good aptitude, so my cultivation was very slow. Fortunately, the cultivation technique manual Martial Uncle gave me was very good, so I entered the first layer of the aura refining realm smoothly. Female cultivators in Linhai can enter Bishuan Court if they have a high cultivation level. So as soon as I entered the first layer of the aura refining realm, I wanted to go to Bishuan Court's guide aunt. At this point she smiled and said, "I think Martial Uncle Qingwei knows what happened at that time. Linhai was in chaos. Bichuan Court was almost wiped out, and individual cultivators all went into hiding. At that time, I was only a teenager and stupid. Going to Bichuan Court was like walking into a trap. Fortunately, someone saved me, and I escaped from the wolf's den. Upon hearing this, Emotinga nodded. You're lucky. Yes. Shui Limbwa smiled and said, although I often encountered bad luck, I always met a benefactor who saved me. The person who saved me was also a senior martial sister from Bichuan Court. After she saved me, she pitied me because I was muddle-headed, so she took me with her. Fortunately, these things didn't involve mortals. Our family lived in a remote place, so normally, no cultivators would go there. That senior martial sister and I went back to the seaside and found an island in the eastern sea to hide. At this point she smiled. In fact, that was the happiest period of my life. There were many cultivators like us hiding near that island. We were in the same boat and helped each other. If there was anything I didn't understand about cultivation, they would try their best to help me. Although we were short of materials and had no spirit veins, so my cultivation was very slow, I still felt very happy. Recalling the past, Shui Limbwa was silent for a while before she continued to say, I learned a lot there. That senior martial sister taught me a lot. Unfortunately later, she was accidentally injured by a demonic beast. We didn't have any medicinal pills at all, so we could only watch her die. She took a breath and continued to say, Martial uncle, you also know that my family's situation isn't very good. My father fishes very hard every day and doesn't earn much money. In the end, I'm also a cultivator, so I often use immortal techniques to catch some rare fish and bring them back to exchange for money for my father. Although my cultivation level is very low, I can still do this kind of thing. This way, the family's situation will be much better, and Xiaobao can also go to school. How good would it be if it could always be like this? Her voice became gloomy. She probably remembered something unpleasant again. Emotinga asked, Then how did you come to Kunwu? Isn't the transporting formation from Linhai to Kunwu in Bichuan Court? Shui Limbwa shook her head with a wry smile. I didn't come out through the transporting formation. She paused for a moment then continued. Demonic beasts occasionally appeared near the island we lived on. Once when I went to catch fish, I accidentally encountered a demonic beast. When I ran for my life, I fell into a whirlpool. When I woke up, I found myself in Yin country. I see. Emotienga was slightly surprised. Linhai wasn't close to Yin country. It seemed this whirlpool wasn't simple. It could unexpectedly transmit people to such a far place. Shui Limbwa said with a smile. Every time my life is in danger, my luck is always very good. After I arrived in Yin country, I found I couldn't go back, so I had no choice but to adapt myself. When I was in Linhai, I heard that Kunwu was a holy land for cultivation. Since I came out, I naturally wanted to go to Kunwu. Later, when I traveled thousands of miles to Kunwu, I found that with my qualifications, no cultivation group would accept me. So I worked in the market square to earn some spirit stones for my cultivation. Emotienga was no stranger to this kind of life. She and her second uncle had also lived like this. However, she was a bit puzzled. With your qualifications, without a lot of spirit stones, it's impossible for you to build your foundation. It's even difficult for you to cultivate to the 5th layer of the aura refining realm or above. How did you do it? Shui Limbwa said. Once I worked for a medicine shop and went to the southern forest to pick medicinal herbs. I accidentally picked several purple jade Ganoderma that were hundreds of years old and hid them. Later, I sold them in batches at the trade fair. With these spirit stones, I reached the 10th layer of the aura refining realm and bought the foundation building pills. You built your foundation on your first try? Shui Limbwa nodded. Yes, even I can't believe it. In fact, after buying the foundation building pills, I didn't have many spirit stones left. If I couldn't build my foundation, I probably wouldn't have another chance in my life. Who knew God would bless me and let me build my foundation on my first try? Speaking up to this point, she laughed. Emotienga nodded silently. It wasn't impossible for someone with 5 spiritual roots to build their foundation on their first try. But it was really a stroke of luck. Among thousands of people, there might not even be one. Thinking of this, she secretly shrouded Shui Linbo with her divine sense. After finding that Shui Linbo was calm and didn't seem to be lying, she smiled. It's really luck. Among the people I know, almost no one can build their foundation on their first try with 5 spiritual roots. Back then, before she met Zhong Muling and only had 5 wasted spiritual roots, she had built her foundation twice. And the second time, she had to take 3 foundation building pills in a row to build her foundation. In comparison, Shui Linbo's luck wasn't just good. Yes, even I find it incredible, Shui Linbo said with a smile. Although I've wandered around and suffered a lot over the years, God always cares for me. Every time I escape from death, I succeeded in building my foundation on my first try. Every time I think of this, I tell myself to live well. Looking at her calm smile and confident look, Emotienga sighed inwardly. If this child didn't lie, with her steadiness and perseverance, it was Jinji's blessing to be with her. Chapter 321. Emotienga found an opportunity to visit Guangzhou about Shui Linbo's injury. After forming his gold core, Senior Marshal Brother Guangzhou was as calm and indifferent as before. He didn't treat her warmly because of her current identity, nor did he treat her coldly. After a sincere invitation, Senior Marshal Brother Guangzhou finally agreed to visit Shui Linbo when he had time, which made Emotienga breathe a sigh of relief. The cultivation techniques practiced by medical cultivators were different from those practiced by Dharma cultivators. Their cultivation techniques paid more attention to the nourishment of the body's meridians and dantian, just like the cultivation techniques used in the secular world. But they were much more powerful. Now that he was in the core formation realm, Senior Marshal Brother Guangzhou already knew a cultivator's body like the back of his hand. Even if he couldn't cure Shui Linbo's injury, he could at least give some advice. After dealing with these chores, Emotienga officially moved to Qinshi's cave. Although Qinshi's cave wasn't as big as Emotienga's previous cave, it wasn't small either. Needless to say, the pill concocting room, the tool refining room, and the spiritual beast room were fully equipped. In addition, there were several small caves, which were originally prepared for him to accept disciples. Although there weren't many, given their personalities, they probably wouldn't accept many disciples, so it should be enough. However, the life of 2 people was different from that of 1 person. Qinshi also specially prepared a closed-door meditation room for emergencies, and his original cultivation room was shared by the 2 of them. With the experience of cultivating together in the virtual sky world, they both knew that cultivating in the same cultivation room wouldn't affect each other, so they could completely share the same room and didn't need to set up anything else. However, they had different opinions about the place where they usually cultivated. Do we need to arrange the cultivation room like this? Anyway, we can enter the virtual sky world to cultivate, can't we? Hearing this, Qinshi sighed and said, Tienga, maybe you haven't noticed that you don't feel any pressure when cultivating in the virtual sky world, but I don't. His words startled Emotienga. Pressure? Yes. Qinshi said, your spiritual roots of the origin and the art of the origin complement each other in an environment like the virtual sky world. But for me, I only feel no pressure inside the virtual sky world when I'm cultivating the art of 3 primordial cycles. At other times, whether it's the pure yang technique or other spells, the pressure is enormous. Is that so? Emotienga felt incredulous. Qinshi frowned and said, I've been thinking about this problem for a long time, but I still can't figure it out. If we ask Master, with Master's experience, he might be able to give us some advice, but, although both of them trusted Lord Taoist Jinghe, a secret wouldn't be a secret if too many people knew about it. Therefore, they only intended to help their master recuperate under other pretexts, and didn't intend to tell him about the virtual sky world. Qinshi continued on. I've been thinking about it for a long time. Perhaps it's because the spiritual aura in this place is too strong. Aside from the art of 3 primordial cycles, which is confirmed to be an ancient cultivation technique, My other techniques have probably been modified by later generations. Furthermore, I have double spiritual roots. Tienga, in the end I'm different from you. His last sentence was filled with helplessness. They were indeed different. Mo Tienga's aptitude and cultivation technique all came from the distant past era, and the environment she cultivated in was also the virtual sky world from the distant past era. Therefore, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say her state was that of an ancient cultivator. However, Qin wasn't like that. He was a pure cultivator of this era, and he merely cultivated the art of 3 primordial cycles. Mo Tienga also heaved a sigh. She knew what Qin said was true. Moreover, he was already in the nascent soul realm now, so he could feel many things more clearly than she could. Nevertheless, hope was ignited in her eyes. She said, Senior Yuan Bao is the same as you. He also cultivates the pure yang technique, but he can cultivate very well in the virtual sky world. He must have a way. Qin smiled. I've never doubted that. However, we might have to wait a little longer. As he stared at Mo Tienga, a lot of emotions flashed through his eyes. There was love, reluctance, helplessness, and confusion. He used to think his woman should be protected under his wings, but Mo Tienga let him know that what she wanted wasn't protection. Instead, she wanted to be connected and walk side by side with him. Now that he was in the nascent soul realm, he had enough ability to protect her, but he felt more and more helpless. In terms of cultivation level, she was inferior to him, but in terms of cultivation, they couldn't stand side by side. For Mo Tienga, the virtual sky world was the best place for her to cultivate. However, after advancing to the nascent soul realm, Qin increasingly felt that cultivating in the virtual sky world wasn't a good choice in his current state. But what Mo Tienga said was right. Yuan Bao could cultivate in the virtual sky world, so could he. So what did he lack now? Yuan Bao had a pure yang constitution. Although he wasn't born with it, his constitution wouldn't be too bad after being transformed by the yang spiritual bead. Yuan Bao's main cultivation technique was the pure yang technique, and his pure yang technique had also been cultivated to a relatively high level. Of course, Yuan Bao was a deification cultivator. The depth of his cultivation level was still incomparable to Qin, right? Qin eyes flashed. After advancing to the nascent soul realm, he discovered that the nascent soul realm was much stronger than the core formation realm. The tenacity of the meridians and the capacity of the spiritual aura in the dantian were more than 100 times higher than in the core formation realm. Similarly, when he cultivated, the spiritual aura he needed also increased to a frightening level. This was already the case from the core formation realm to the nascent soul realm. What about from the nascent soul realm to the deification realm? Yuan Bao was like a fish in water in the virtual sky world. Was it because he was a deification cultivator, and the spiritual aura in the human world couldn't satisfy his cultivation, so he could adapt to the spiritual aura in the virtual sky world so well? But if that was the case, things would be troublesome. Other things were easy to deal with, but this cultivation level was something he couldn't rush. There hadn't been a deification cultivator in the celestial pole for tens of thousands of years, so he wasn't sure whether he could advance to the deification realm or not. What's wrong? Mo Tienga asked when she saw his expression changing. Qin sighed and explained to her the problems he was thinking about just now. Mo Tienga also sank into contemplation. She originally thought their dual cultivation was a match made in heaven. With the addition of the yin and yang dual cultivation technique Yuan Bao gave them, their cultivation path would be much easier in the future. But when things came to a head, problems she never thought about surfaced one after another. If that was the case, they could only maintain their original cultivation pace, and wouldn't be able to better use the advantages of their constitutions. The most important thing was that in the Middle Ages era, many cultivators ascended. With her current state, even if she couldn't ascend, she could at least cultivate like Zhong Muling. But what about Qin? Qin was a genius cultivator in this era, but the bottleneck to advance to the deification realm was difficult even for geniuses. Forget it, let's not think about it for now, Qin said. I think maybe when you reach the nascent soul realm, everything will be solved. After all, our cultivation levels are still a big gap, and we can't even thoroughly understand the yin and yang dual cultivation technique. Emotienga also knew that if Qin couldn't think of a solution, it would be very difficult for her to think of one with her cultivation level and vision. Fortunately, they had a lot of time, and didn't need to be in a hurry. Since Qin already knew about the existence of the virtual sky world, there was no need to hide those medicinal pills. Nascent soul cultivators could live for more than 1,000 years. If their cultivation level was high, and they took good care of themselves, it wasn't impossible for them to live for more than 2,000 years. Coupled with the longevity pills concocted from the spiritual herbs in the virtual sky world, Qin could live for more than 2,000 years. Right now he was only a little over 200 years old. As for Emotienga, a core formation cultivator's lifespan was about 600 to 800 years. She had also taken longevity pills, so she could live for more than 1,000 years. Besides, she was very confident in her cultivation speed. Even if she didn't take 100 years, she could still form her nascent soul in 200 years. In this way, these problems could be solved slowly in more than 1,000 years' time. There's one more thing. Emotienga remembered. What do you think of Shui Linbua? Although Qin didn't participate in the conversation with Shui Linbua, with the power of a nascent soul cultivator, his divine sense had never left Mingxin residence, so he clearly knew the content of their conversation. Qin thought for a moment and said, "Except for the fact that her origin can't be verified, there are no other flaws." Emotienga nodded. This was also her conclusion. Shui Linbua said she came from the Eastern Sea, and was an old friend. However, at that time, Anan was still young, so she couldn't recognize her at all. In other words, she couldn't confirm whether Shui Linbua was really the little girl from the Eastern Sea. In addition, everything else she said could be verified. With the manpower of Xianqing School, it wasn't difficult to investigate the experience of an individual cultivator, and she had already secretly ordered the steward's hall to handle this matter. "Don't worry too much," Qin comforted her. "She's a foundation-building cultivator after all, and the whole Shangqing Palace is under the control of Master's divine sense. If there was anything wrong with her, Master would have warned us." Emotienga thought about it and agreed. Maybe the two of them didn't have enough experience, but Master was a real old fox. Even if he was seriously injured now, it was impossible for a small foundation-building cultivator to deceive him. It was difficult for a low-level cultivator to lie under the spiritual aura pressure of a high-level cultivator. After pondering for a while, Emotienga suddenly smiled. "The two of us are actually worried about a foundation-building cultivator." "Alas," Qin smiled and said, "we have to be careful. It's fine if she's just an ordinary disciple. Which cultivation group doesn't have a few spies from other cultivation groups? But Jinji has feelings for her, so things are different. Jinji is my only disciple, and also your nephew. He can be said to be our closest junior. If they perform dual cultivation, Shui Linbua's identity will be unusual." Emotienga suddenly had an idea and said, "By the way, if there's nothing suspicious about her, I can accept her as my disciple. I remember she has 5 spiritual roots, so maybe she can practice the art of the origin." Qin couldn't help but smile. How can a cultivator with 5 spiritual roots casually practice the art of the origin? "I think it's because Shui Linbua likes your temperament. You also want Jinji to feel at ease, right?" Emotienga lowered her head in embarrassment when he hit the nail on the head, but she felt she was right, so she said confidently, "I'm a core formation cultivator now, so it's only right for me to accept a disciple. At least, I can ask someone to run errands for me. And it's only right." Qin nodded, but the next moment, he glanced at her with a faint smile. "However, Master Taoist Qingwei, you're a genius who formed your gold core within 100 years. And you're also Lord Taoist Jinghe's last disciple, and Lord Taoist Shoujing's dual cultivation Tao companion. What disciple can't you accept? Why do you have to accept a disciple with 5 spiritual roots who's half dead?" Emotienga laughed dryly, and had to admit it. "Fine, if Shui Linbua recovers, Junji will most likely perform dual cultivation with her. At that time, I'll accept her as my disciple as a gift to Junji. Qin agreed, but he emphasized, we'll talk about this later. At the very least, we have to clearly investigate her origin and make sure there's no doubt about it. Don't worry, I know that. Chapter 322. Before long, the nascent soul ceremony was held as scheduled. It was very low-key this time. Only some friendly sects of Xianqing school received invitations and came to participate. However, the guests who came were led by at least core formation cultivators. The standard wasn't any lower than last time. Because of this, Emotienga was very busy. There weren't many guests, but they were at least core formation cultivators, so they needed to receive them. She was Qin's Dao companion now, so she obviously couldn't stay out of it. Compared to receiving guests, the real soul formation ceremony was actually very simple. Just like last time, under the witness of all the disciples and guests, Qin paid his respects to the three Pure One's patriarchs, accepted the title of Grand Supreme Elder, and kowtowed to express his gratitude for his master's kindness. Unlike last time, after kowtowing to thank his master, Emotienga also went forward and reported to Lord Taoist Jinghe with Qin, asking him to allow them to become Dao companions. Afterward, the nascent soul ceremony ended, and the guests were invited. This time, Emotienga finally didn't need to accompany the guests. She and Qin followed Lord Taoist Jinghe back to Shangqing Palace. Today, Lord Taoist Jinghe wore a Qianquan Taoist robe, a Qianquan crown, a pair of 8 trigrams shoes, and traditional nascent soul Taoist clothing of Xianqing school. He looked extraordinary, and his face was carefully groomed. His short beard was neat. However, as soon as he entered Shangqing Palace, his body swayed, and he couldn't even stand steadily. Master! Emotienga and Qin called out in unison, and hurried to help him. With their help, Lord Taoist Jinghe sat back on the dragon chair in the hall. His black hair quickly faded and turned pure white. For this nascent soul ceremony, Lord Taoist Jinghe used a secret technique to temporarily restore his appearance to before he was injured. After all, he was the second nascent soul expert in Xianqing school, second only to Lord Taoist Jinyang. If his old appearance was seen by the guests, today's nascent soul ceremony wouldn't achieve its purpose of announcing Xianqing school's strength. After sitting down, Lord Taoist Jinghe took a breath and waved his hand, signaling the two to let him go. Emotienga asked with concern, Master, how are you? Lord Taoist Jinghe swallowed a medicinal pill, shook his head, and said with a smile, Fortunately, I have these medicinal pills you prepared. I'm fine. Then he closed his eyes and meditated. Emotienga felt a bit relieved after hearing what Lord Taoist Jinghe said. Although his hair still turned white, his face wasn't as old as it was when they first came back. This was a good sign because it showed that Lord Taoist Jinghe's cultivation level was continuously recovering. After a while, Lord Taoist Jinghe opened his eyes. After adjusting his breathing, his complexion looked much better. He raised his head to look at his two disciples and smiled. Thanks to the flowerless golden fruit you brought back, Master's meridians have recovered quite a bit. As long as I have enough medicinal pills, I should be able to recover to my peak state within 50 years. If I'm lucky, I might be able to reach the late stage of nascent soul during this process. That would be a blessing in disguise. Emotienga and Qin glanced at each other, but they didn't feel very happy. Although what Master said might not be impossible, how many cultivators have been stuck at the early stage of nascent soul for hundreds, or even thousands of years? The nascent soul stage had never been difficult to cultivate, but it was difficult to advance. The breakthrough of a small stage was no less than the bottleneck of nascent soul formation. With a sigh in his heart, Qin said, Master, rest assured. I'm already a nascent soul cultivator now, so I have the ability to search for medicine for you. Yes. This time, Lord Taoist Jinghe didn't refuse. His strength was right in front of him. Qin was now a nascent soul cultivator, who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. By the way, the medicinal power of those 3 flowerless golden fruits is too strong, so I can't take them all at once. You've just formed your nascent soul, so your realm isn't stable yet, so you can't take such spiritual medicine. Therefore, I gave one to your martial uncle Xinjiang. I'll let master decide on these matters, Qinshi said softly. When they harvested the flowerless golden fruits, they were worried they wouldn't have enough, so they plucked all the fruits from the tree. These fruits couldn't be kept for too long. If they weren't taken in time, their spiritual aura would be lost, so giving one to Lord Taoist Xinjiang was the most appropriate way to deal with them. After all, Lord Taoist Xinjiang also contributed a lot to Lord Taoist Jinghe's injury. Lord Taoist Jinghe's eyes flashed as he stared at the two disciples in front of him. He asked, "Did the two of you encounter some difficulties while cultivating?" This question startled the two of them. Emotinga said, "Master, how did you know?" Lord Taoist Jinghe chuckled. "What haven't Master seen? I've long felt it wouldn't be easy for you to perform dual cultivation." Qinshi suddenly thought of something and asked, "Master, which direction do you think will encounter problems?" "What? Are you testing me?" Lord Taoist Jinghe glanced at him and said with a faint smile, "In my opinion, the problem might be the incompatibility of your cultivation techniques." Emotinga and Qinshi looked at each other. Although it wasn't very accurate, it wasn't far off. Lord Taoist Jinghe looked very confident. "What? Is Master wrong?" Qinshi nodded helplessly. "Yes. Master, why do you think so?" "It's very simple," Lord Taoist Jinghe said. "In the end, Tinga's situation is too complicated. She has both a pure Yin constitution and a spiritual root of the origin, which can't be used without a special cultivation technique. If the two of you don't choose cultivation techniques that match your constitutions and only perform dual cultivation based on your constitutions, the effect will be much worse. Not to mention the virtual sky world. This was indeed the problem they encountered now. Qinshi couldn't help but ask, "Master, do you have any solution?" "No." Lord Taoist Jinghe shook his head. Lord Taoist Jinghe simply shook his head. "I've seen more than you, but I'm not omnipotent. Do you think I know everything?" He paused for a moment then said in a relaxed tone, "However, Master can give you a suggestion." Emotinga's and Qinshi's eyes brightened, and they stared at him. Lord Taoist Jinghe smiled and said, You should enter closed-door meditation to stabilize your realm first." Qinshi was stunned and said in disbelief, "Master, what kind of suggestion is that? It wouldn't help their situation at all." Lord Taoist Jinghe smiled. "Although you're a nascent soul cultivator now, you haven't fully understood the true meaning of this realm, so there are many things you can't understand for a while. It's very simple to solve this problem, but the method is also very stupid. That is, enter closed-door meditation to stabilize your realm and fully understand the state of the nascent soul realm." At this point he warned Qinshi earnestly, "Boy, the nascent soul realm isn't that simple. People say that once you reach the nascent soul realm, you'll have the ability to move mountains, overturn seas and land. This isn't an exaggeration. When you completely reach the level of the nascent soul stage, you will understand the horror of the nascent soul stage. In this level, you will be able to completely grasp the profoundness of cultivation arts, and you will be able to use some secret arts with ease. You can even create your own cultivation arts." Qinshi was silent, but his eyes flashed. He had heard about these things sporadically, but after he reached the nascent soul realm, he found it wasn't so exaggerated. He thought it was just people exaggerating, but his master wouldn't lie to him. Creating his own cultivation technique. Only by understanding the true secret of spiritual aura could he create his own cultivation technique. If he really reached that realm, the dual cultivation technique between him and Emotinga could be modified based on their actual situation. In other words, he could create a cultivation technique unique to the two of them. Lord Taoist Jinghe showed a satisfied smile. "You're a smart child. The master leads the way, but the cultivation depends on the individual. This saying also applies in the cultivation world. I can only tell you this much about the nascent soul realm. Next, you have to rely on yourself to understand it." Qinshi carefully pondered his words in his heart. In the end he nodded. "I understand, Master. Lord Taoist Jinghe nodded with a smile. All right, I'll go back and continue my closed-door meditation. With these medicinal pills, I won't come out for 10 years. You two can go now. Yes, master. The two of them respectfully excused themselves. Qin Shi's mood surged after hearing those words. He took Mo Tiange's hand and went back to his cave, but he still couldn't restrain his emotions. Tiange. Mo Tiange stared at him. Qin Shi's current expression clearly showed that he had made a decision. This was also related to her future path. After a while, when these mundane things are done, I'll enter closed-door meditation. Qin Shi sighed, looked down at her, and said softly, I'll enter closed-door meditation here. He emphasized it like this, because he didn't plan to enter the virtual sky world anymore. Mo Tiange didn't say anything. In fact, she was already prepared in her heart. There were still many problems to solve between them. With Qin Shi's personality, he wouldn't covet the little convenience in the virtual sky world and give up exploring the true meaning of the nascent soul. He stayed in the virtual sky world for 10 years, and his art of 3 primordial cycles had been cultivated to a certain realm. His cultivation speed for other cultivation techniques and secret techniques was far slower than the art of 3 primordial cycles. So in this case, staying in his cave for closed-door meditation was much better than entering the virtual sky world. But in this way, the two of them would have to separate again. She didn't feel it was unbearable. How could cultivators stay together forever? Each of them would enter closed-door meditation for a few years or a few decades. They were both people with firm Tao hearts. If they stayed together all the time, it would go against their hearts. I understand. Seeing that she agreed calmly, but her eyes were full of reluctance, Qin Shi couldn't help but hug her. Half a day later, everything stopped. Qin Shi thought for a while, then asked hesitantly, Do you still remember one thing? Mo Tiange took some time to put on her outer robe. Wanderer Ziwei's 200-year agreement, Qin Shi said. 59 years have passed, so there are only 140 years left. Finding the remains of a cultivator who died 5,000 years ago isn't easy, so we should start as soon as possible. Oh, Mo Tiange remembered. She hadn't done it before, because she wasn't strong enough. Now that she was a core formation cultivator with a natal magic weapon in hand, she could give it a try. However, she couldn't figure it out for the time being. She thought for a while, then said, It's better to let the steward's hall inquire about this first. Once we have some clues, we can slowly look for it. Qin Shi also thought it was safer this way. If there's any news, remember to wait for me when I come out of closed-door meditation. Then we can go together. He remembered that Wanderer Ziwei's Tao companion was also a nascent soul cultivator. The place where a nascent soul cultivator died was definitely not simple. He was afraid she would be in danger alone. Mo Tiange hesitated for a moment but still agreed. I understand. Chapter 323. Shortly after the nascent soul ceremony, the steward's hall had investigated Shui Limbua's background and reported it. According to the preliminary investigation, Shui Limbua wasn't lying. Except for what happened in Linhai, the steward's hall had investigated all her encounters and found nothing suspicious. Since there was nothing suspicious, Mo Tiange felt relieved. Yi Zhenji was the junior closest to her and Qin Shi. His Tao companion could have poor aptitudes and a low cultivation level, but she absolutely couldn't harbor evil intentions. In addition, what reassured Mo Tiange was that compared to Yi Zhenji, Shui Limbua's character was much steadier, and she had experienced a lot more. If she could supervise him from time to time, she could cultivate with ease and let go of Yi Zhenji. As for Shui Limbua's injury, after confirming her identity, Mo Tiange asked Kuang Zhu to take care of her. No matter what precious materials he needed, he could just ask her. Not to mention other things, with her current status as a core formation elder, she could afford the cost of treating Shui Limbua. She could also afford any precious materials he needed. There was no need to worry about Lord Taoist Jinghe in the short term. Shui Limbua's injury was also under Kuang Zhu's care. There were also some miscellaneous matters that had finally been sorted out. In the following days, What she had to pay attention to was Qin Shi's closed-door meditation. Qin Shi's closed-door meditation this time was no small matter. According to his initial estimation, it would take at least 10 to 20 years. In that case, he had to prepare a lot of things. Mo Tiange felt it was impossible for her to stay in Xianqing school during this period of time. She'd stayed in the virtual sky world for 10 years. With the help of dual cultivation, her cultivation level had successfully reached the peak of the early stage of the core formation realm. It'd be best if she didn't enter closed-door meditation in the short term. Since that was the case, she had to go out to travel and handle affairs. In that case, she had to leave something for Qin Shi, such as some special medicinal pills. There was also her master. She couldn't concoct all of the pills, but at the very least, she had to concoct 1 or 2 types, so that her master could use them to treat his injuries when he came out of closed-door cultivation. Concocting pills, concocting medicines, cultivating, studying magic weapons, and occasionally giving pointers to Junji and Shui Linbua. 2 years passed quickly. Although the past 2 years had been peaceful, it had been very fulfilling. Becoming Dao companions with Qin, she didn't bring any trouble to his life. Their personalities were compatible, and after the time they spent in the virtual sky world, they quickly adapted to the life of 2 people. Just as Qin Shi was about to enter closed-door meditation, Mo Tiange sensed a familiar aura coming from afar. It was her weak divine sense. 10,000 miles sound transmitting talisman. Mo Tiange carefully recalled that she seemed to have only given the 10,000 miles sound transmitting talisman to one person, and that person was the sect head of Bishuan Court, Wei Haolan. However, this aura wasn't very far from her. It should be somewhere in Kuanzhong City. Could it be that someone from Bishuan Court came to Kunwu? Mo Tiange told Qin Shi about this matter. Qin Shi frowned and thought for a while. They know your identity, so why didn't they come looking for you directly? Why did they send out a 10,000 miles sound-transmitting talisman instead? This was exactly what Mo Tiange was worried about. I think maybe this person encountered some kind of danger, so he had no choice but to use this method to contact me. Qin Shi also thought so. He thought for a moment then said, "How about I go with you?" Don't. Mo Tiange stared at him and said helplessly, "You're a nascent soul cultivator now, and you've been preparing for closed-door meditation for such a long time. Why do you want to accompany me everywhere?" Qin Shi was a bit embarrassed by her words. He said, "I'm a bit worried. In any case, I'm a core formation cultivator. Now, I'm just a step away from breaking through to the middle stage of the early stage. All these years, you've taught me a lot about fights of magical powers. Don't tell me I can't even handle such a small matter?" Qin Shi was speechless. If it was any other core formation cultivator, he wouldn't have this kind of thought. Even when she was still a foundation-building cultivator, and she was traveling outside, he didn't worry about her like this. Now he could only say he was confused because he was too concerned. "Listen to me," Mo Tiange said cautiously. "You should focus on your closed-door meditation. I'll handle these things myself." Seeing that Qin Shi seemed to want to say something, she raised her hand to stop him. She stared straight at him and said, "Trust me, okay?" After thinking for a while, Qin Shi sighed helplessly and nodded. "All right, I know I should trust you, no matter what aspect it is." Now that she had obtained his permission, Mo Tiange smiled. In a flash, she sat on his lap and leaned forward to kiss him. "All right, you should focus on your closed-door meditation. I hope everything will be solved by the time you come out." Qin Shi pressed her down. "That's not enough." Several days later, while Qin Shi was in closed-door meditation, Mo Tiange left Xianqing School and headed for Kuanzhong City to search for the aura of the 10,000 miles sound-transmitting talisman. Although the place where the 10,000 miles sound-transmitting talisman was sent wasn't far, it wasn't close either. For a core formation cultivator, it would take them at least several days to fly to reach Kuanzhong City. Mo Tiange didn't know whether she would make it in time when she arrived, so she could only try her best. Back then, she and second uncle also used a 10,000 miles sound-transmitting talisman to ask Qin Shi for help. Coincidentally, Qin Shi happened to be nearby. Otherwise, By the time he arrived or sent Xianqing school disciples to investigate, she and second uncle would have already died without a burial place. This kind of 10,000 miles sound-transmitting talisman sealed the cultivator's own divine sense. Even if it was thousands of miles away, the cultivator could still trace the place where the sound-transmitting talisman was crushed. Moreover, the reaction time of the divine sense was also relatively long. It could remain for nearly a month, which was enough for Mo Tiange to find that place. The speed of the cloud-treading boots reached its peak. In just a few days, Mo Tiange landed outside Quanzhong City. The place where she crushed the 10,000 miles sound-transmitting talisman was inside Quanzhong City. Now that she was close, Mo Tiange confirmed the direction and followed the imprint left by her divine sense. Unexpectedly, it was the restaurant where Qin Shi took her to meet up with Taoist Kumu and the others 12 years ago. Back then, she'd just advanced to the core formation realm, and even using her divine sense in Quanzhong City made her feel uncomfortable. 12 years had passed, and those core formation experts who looked down on her in this restaurant back then had already turned into ashes. But she was already in the core formation realm with ease. This road to longevity was just this cruel. After the great waves washed away the sand, the new generation replaced the old. Back then, Lord Taoist Jinghe was furious about Yi Xinji's matter, and Master Taoist Mingzhen slaughtered the individual cultivators' alliance in Quanzhong City. Because of that, Xianqing School also became a malefic existence in Quanzhong City. Although Quanzhong City was still a city of individual cultivators and a city of trade, it was no longer as neutral as before. Upon seeing the Xianqing School Taoist robe Mo Tiange was wearing, the restaurant's manager came to welcome her and greeted her with great enthusiasm. This lowly one greets Fairy. Fairy, may I ask how I can help you? Mo Tiange followed the imprint left by her divine sense and went upstairs. After making several turns, she pointed at a room. Who lived in this room half a month ago? Half a month ago. The manager was dumbfounded. Fairy, this room is also occupied by 2 master immortals. They've indeed been here for half a month, but they haven't checked out yet. 2 master immortals? Mo Tiange's gaze shifted. Did Bishuan Court send a male cultivator? Her divine sense had already enveloped the entire inn, but there was no one in this room. Did they go out? The manager shook his head. Fairy, this lowly one is just a mortal. If the master immortals went out, this lowly one wouldn't know. This was also the truth. Aside from low-level cultivators, which cultivator would go through the front door when staying in an inn? They'd just fly out directly. Just as Mo Tiange was thinking about how to deal with this, she saw the manager staring at her in fear. So she said, "You can go now. I came to look for someone." How could the manager dare to say no? He just answered respectfully, then turned around and left. After the manager left, Mo Tiange's spiritual aura fluctuated, and the room's door opened. She stepped into the room, swept her gaze around, and her divine sense enveloped the room. She frowned. The 10,000 miles sound-transmitting talisman was indeed crushed here, and there were other cultivators' breaths in this room. However, this wasn't good news, because based on the remaining breaths, she speculated that one of the 2 people was at least a core formation cultivator. Bishuan Court shouldn't have a core formation cultivator so soon. So this person fell into the hands of a core formation cultivator? However, there were no defensive formations or restrictions laid in this place. Apparently, these 2 cultivators only treated this place as a temporary residence. Mo Tiange pondered for a while, then put her hand into her Qingquan bag and took out several things. They were formation discs and formation flags. She hadn't used formations to fight enemies for a long time, so the current situation was very suitable for laying a trap here. With a faint smile, her sleeves fluttered, and the formation discs and formation flags flew out and fell one after another. In just a moment, the formation was set up properly. She then walked to a corner and laid spirit stones. With this 4 symbols 100 flowers formation, even if this core formation cultivator's cultivation level was higher than hers, it wouldn't be difficult to deal with him. Once she was done, Mo Tiange took out the heaven and earth fan and leisurely leaned against the window, sipping tea and watching the street view. Time passed by bit. It was noon when she arrived, but the person still hadn't come back even when night fell. Emotienga wasn't worried. Since he didn't check out of the room, he probably hadn't left. If he really left, she didn't even know who sent the summoning talisman, so she didn't have any way to track him. So she might as well continue to wait. She waited until the moon was high in the sky. In the dead of night, the shops in Kuanzhong City closed one after another. Emotienga sat cross-legged on a chair, silently adjusting her breath. Suddenly, her divine sense tightened, and she immediately hid her breath completely. Although her breath-concealing technique wasn't brilliant, she had the spirit-concealing pendant. Not to mention a core formation cultivator. Even a nascent soul cultivator wouldn't be able to detect her for a while. Then 2 breaths appeared nearby. One was in the middle stage of the foundation building realm, and the other was in the late stage of the core formation realm. Emotienga was shocked. They were actually in the late stage of the core formation realm. Was she confident? The thought flashed in her mind, but she calmed down again. What was there to be afraid of? She wasn't the Emo Qingwei, who had just formed her gold core 12 years ago. With a magic weapon like the Heaven and Earth fan in hand, 10 years of exploration, and Qin Shi's guidance, her strength in fights of magical powers had improved a lot. Moreover, she now had the 4 symbols 100 flowers formation as her backing. The person was getting closer and closer, and Emotienga heard a voice. "Brat, can't you calm down a bit? When have I ever mistreated you, senior? Run. Where can you run to?" The voice sounded a bit familiar. Emotienga frowned slightly, still holding the Heaven and Earth fan in her hand tightly. Even if it might be an acquaintance, she had to subdue it first. Then she heard another familiar voice pleading. "Senior, just let me go, okay? You won't get any benefits from holding me. Tang Shen." Emotienga raised her eyebrows. This was Tang Shen's voice. He actually came to Kunwu. Chapter 324. Although she hadn't seen Tang Shen for 40 years, Emotienga wouldn't mistake his tone. After all, they were both locked up in Bishuan Court's Dao Achieving Pagoda for 20 years, so they were already familiar with Tang Shen's tone and habitual phrases. They stopped outside, and the core formation cultivator who caught Tang Shen said indifferently, "Let you go? Brat, I was almost killed to save you. Is this how you treat your savior?" Tang Shen was speechless. Inside the room, Emotienga, who had concealed her breath, frowned slightly. Did he mean Tang Shen was snatched from someone else? She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This Tang Shen, didn't he know he had a pure yang constitution, and would be discovered by high-level cultivators if he didn't keep a low profile? Although a pure yang constitution wasn't as eye-catching as a pure yin constitution, if 1 or 2 high-level female cultivators fell in love with him, it would be a disaster. Even if he didn't think of it, Wei Haolan wouldn't think of it either, right? She actually let him come to Kunwu just like that. She didn't know whether someone came with him or not, and if so, where was he now? She needed Tang Shen to answer so many questions. Emotienga clenched the Heaven and Earth fan in her hand. No matter what, she had to save Tang Shen first. "Brat, you're lucky to run into me. You have to be grateful, understand?" After the man finished speaking, a sword aura suddenly shot through the window. Emotienga unfolded the Heaven and Earth fan. Mountains and rivers appeared indistinctly, blocking the sword aura. Then she shook her sleeves, activating the formation disc and the formation flags. The 4 symbols 100 flowers formation was ready to be launched. Seeing that his attack didn't succeed, the man immediately retreated and said coldly, "A mere early-stage core formation cultivator dares to ambush me. Your breath-concealing technique is brilliant, but unfortunately, my divine sense found you 1 step ahead of me." Emotienga's heart trembled. I see. She thought her divine sense was strong enough, but this man's divine sense wasn't weak either. Before she concealed her breath, he'd already discovered her. She had to pay attention to this point in the future. She mustn't neglect it again. However, although this man was a late-stage core formation cultivator and a sword cultivator, she wasn't afraid. She had already figured out how to use the Heaven and Earth fan, And with the 4 symbols 100 flowers formation here, her chances of winning were extremely high. Even if she couldn't win, she could still run away. The 4 symbols 100 flowers formation was activated, and light shone. The 4 symbols divine beasts flickered faintly at its 4 corners, and countless flower petals fluttered above the light barrier. Whether it was the 4 symbols or the 100 flowers, they were the result of spiritual energy flashing. They weren't real, but the killing intent hidden within them was real. The sword light flashed again and shot in through the window. However, the moment it touched the 4 symbols 100 flowers formation, it was blocked by the light shield. At the same time, countless petals rushed out and almost swallowed the person. Through the window, Emotinga saw the man pulling Tang Shen. Sword lights danced around his body, blocking all the petals outside. In the end, his sword aura surged and pushed all the petals back. The petals scattered, revealing a male cultivator dressed in blue robes. "It's you," Emotinga shouted. Hearing her voice, both of them were startled at the same time. Tang Shen was then overjoyed. "Elder Yi." This sword cultivator in the late stage of the core formation realm in blue robes was Jing Xingji. Jing Xingji slowed down and showed a puzzled expression. After a while he seemed to recognize her voice. "You're Emo Qingwei." Emo Tiange held the formation flag in her hand. With a light wave, the 4 symbols 100 flowers formation stopped. She said, "Yes, fellow Taoist Jing, long time no see." Although she said this calmly, Emo Tiange's heart was in turmoil. The last time she saw Jing Xingji was when she ran into Master Song Feng and almost fell into his trap. When she woke up later, Jing Xingji was no longer there. She told him to leave first. This action made Emo Tiange feel relieved at that time. Even though nothing had happened, it was still unpleasant to see Jing Xingji. It had been a long time since the incident happened. She and Qin were living well, and had long forgotten about Jing Xingji. She didn't expect him to also escape from Demonic Mountain and meet him here. Jing Xingji was silent for a while, then said, "Long time no see." The light in the room was lit. Emo Tiange opened the window, and Jing Xingji landed with Tang Shen. After more than 10 years, Jing Xingji still looked the same. However, he seemed to be injured now, and his spiritual aura was a bit unstable. Tang Shen was happy. As soon as he saw Emo Tiange, he was pleasantly surprised. "Elder Yi, it's really you. You've advanced to the core formation realm." Emo Tiange smiled at him. Tang Shen's cultivation level was still in the middle stage of the foundation building realm, but he was already at the peak. Maybe he came to come with this time to gain experience? Then she said to Jing Xingji, "Fellow Taoist Jing, I don't know how my friend offended you. If he did, I'll apologize to you on his behalf." Jing Xingji glanced at her, then looked at Tang Shen with a frown. "You know each other?" "Yes." Emo Tiange still smiled. "Fellow Taoist Jing, please be magnanimous." After a while, seeing that Jing Xingji didn't respond, she said, "If my friend offended you, fellow Taoist Jing, please tell me. I'll compensate for him." "Compensate?" Jing Xingji glanced at her with a faint smile. "How will fellow Taoist Qingwei compensate him?" "This child has a pure yang constitution, so he's a good target for female cultivators to pluck. I'm afraid you can't compensate someone like him, right?" Emo Tiange's expression changed. Jing Xingji actually knows about Tang Shen's constitution? What did this Tang Shen do to attract other people's attention? Although constitutions and spiritual roots couldn't be concealed from high-level cultivators, which high-level cultivator would be so bored as to check the aptitudes of low-level cultivators for no reason? But Jing Xingji's tone changed. "Since fellow Taoist Qingwei said so, it wouldn't be good for me to not let him go. Fellow Taoist can just take this boy away." His eyes flashed, but he said, "I just don't know if fellow Taoist Shoujing will be jealous if he finds out." Emo Tiange paused for a moment, then her expression turned cold. "You don't need to worry about this, fellow Taoist Jing." Jing Xingji smiled. He didn't get angry and said to Tang Shen, "Boy, you can go now." Tang Shen didn't dare to believe that he got his freedom so easily. "Senior, are you really willing to let me go?" Jing Xingji lowered his eyes and said, "If it was someone else, I wouldn't mind." Since Emo Qingwei asked, how could I refuse? Emotienga should be happy that Jing Xingji gave her face like this. But the meaning behind his words made it seem like the two of them had a special relationship, which made her feel suffocated. Just as she felt annoyed, she heard Jing Xingji continue to say, "In any case, I wronged you and Qin Shoujing before. Today I'll return this boy to you, so I'll pay you back." Emotienga was stunned, and the unhappiness in her heart vanished. That matter wasn't Jing Xingji's fault. He also fell into her trap, but he still felt that he wronged her and Qin Shi, which could be considered as having some affection for them. After a moment of silence, Emotienga said softly, "Thank you, fellow Taoist Jing." Jing Xingji waved his hand, found a chair to sit down, and was about to pour a cup of tea when he suddenly coughed twice. Emotienga could hear the surging spiritual aura in his coughs. Obviously, he was injured and couldn't suppress it anymore. She thought for a moment, then took out a jade bottle from inside her robe and put it down. She said, "These medicinal pills can be considered my thanks to you on his behalf." From the conversation she heard with Tang Shen before, Jing Xingji snatched Tang Shen from someone else's hands. From this point of view, it could be said that Jing Xingji saved Tang Shen. Jing Xingji's gaze fell on the jade bottle, but he didn't refuse. "Then I won't be polite." Emotienga smiled, gave Tang Shen a meaningful look and said, "That being the case, we'll take our leave first. See you later." Jing Xingji nodded but turned around, no longer looking at them. With a wave of her hand, Emotienga summoned the white silk handkerchief and flew away with Tang Shen. The sky was already dark, and the city gate of Kuanzhong City was closed. There were restrictions on the city gate, so it was very troublesome to break them. Emotienga thought for a moment, then took Tang Shen to Xianqing School's branch in Kuanzhong City to settle down for the time being. The arrival of a core formation elder made the manager of this branch very nervous. When he found out that Emotienga was only here to stay, he vacated a very good courtyard for her. After the two of them settled down in the courtyard, and Emotienga dismissed the others, she finally had a chance to ask Tang Shen, "What happened? Why did you come to Kunwu and still fall into someone else's hands?" Tang Shen was surprised to see a group of foundation-building cultivators treating Emotienga with respect. Upon hearing her question, he hastily answered, "Elder Yi, I came to look for you." Oh, Emotienga was even more puzzled. "That day, I left my identity and name. Since you came to look for me, you should have come to Xianqing School and asked to see me. Why was I captured midway? What kind of accident happened in the end? Also, why did you come to look for me? It couldn't be that there was a problem with Bishuan Court, right?" Upon hearing her question, Tang Shen immediately told her these things bit by bit, not daring to omit any details. As it turned out, Tang Shen came to Kunwu more than 10 years ago. All these years, Bishuan Court never produced a core formation cultivator, so Tang Shen had always held the position of an elder. However, ever since they discovered a spirit stone vein in the Eastern Sea, Bishuan Court's situation improved a lot. They could now afford any medicinal pills or spiritual objects they needed. Tang Shen came to Kunwu because two late-stage Bishuan Court cultivators' cultivation was progressing smoothly, so they could prepare to form their gold cores. Medicinal pills for forming one's gold core couldn't be bought even in Kunwu with spirit stones, so Wei Haolan had no choice but to ask Emotienga for help. Since Emotienga was a disciple of a big cultivation group, she might have some connections, so she wanted to ask Emotienga for help. When Tang Shen heard about this, he insisted on coming to Kunwu. Wei Haolan originally didn't agree, but Tang Shen was very determined. Since she couldn't win him over, she let him come. Speaking of which, Tang Shen was really unlucky. Tang Shen was no longer the young Master Tang who knew nothing in the past. Ever since he arrived in Kunwu, he always kept a low profile, but his appearance as the son of an aristocratic family still attracted bad people in the end. His strength wasn't weak, but after he counterattacked, he happened to run into a nascent soul cultivator who was interested in him. As a result, that nascent soul cultivator discovered Emotienga's constitution and immediately captured him. At that time, Demonic Mountain was about to open. That nascent soul cultivator took Emotienga with him and entered Demonic Mountain. Originally, he planned to deal with Emotienga after they left Demonic Mountain. Apparently, he wanted to use Emotienga as a human furnace for a junior. Unexpectedly, an unforeseen event happened on Demonic Mountain. That nascent soul cultivator died on Demonic Mountain, and Tang Shen fell into the hands of that cultivator's disciple. That nascent soul cultivator's disciple's cultivation level was already in the middle stage of the core formation realm. Because Jade Palace was dangerous, that nascent soul cultivator let his disciple take Tang Shen out of Demonic Mountain first. Because of that, the two of them escaped a calamity. Chapter 325. Did Jing Xingji save you? Emotienga asked after listening to Tang Shen's experience. Tang Shen blushed slightly and nodded. Sort of. After we came out of Demonic Mountain, the fatty was seriously injured and hid in Mount Yuheng to recuperate. During those years, I tried to escape several times but failed. Later, when he recovered, he wanted to take me somewhere. We met Senior Jing on the way. They were from the same sect, but Senior Jing seemed to have a grudge against him, so they fought. That fatty thought Senior Jing was injured, so he disregarded their friendship and wanted to take the opportunity to kill him and steal his treasure. In the end, he was killed by Senior Jing. Is that so? Emotienga muttered to herself. Right. Tang Shen just said the nascent soul cultivator who caught him was called Venerable Swordsman Fuling, one of Gujian sect's nascent soul venerables. Jing Xingji actually fought with his disciple. It seemed his days in Gujian sect were really hard. Now that he killed a fellow disciple and was injured, he probably couldn't go back to Gujian sect, right? Emotienga thought for a while, then shook her head. She didn't need to worry about Jing Xingji. Recalling how Tang Shen called that core formation cultivator fatty, but called Jing Xingji Senior Jing, she asked, Did Jing Xingji treat you well? Tang Shen hesitated for a moment, then said, And aside from not letting me go, he occasionally gave me some pointers. At this point, he scratched his head in embarrassment. I'm sorry, Elder Yi. Senior Jing said that he wanted to exchange me for healing elixirs, so I was nervous and used the 10,000 miles sound transmitting talisman to make you come all the way here to save me. Emotienga smiled. It's nothing. Jing Xingji isn't a good person. Even if he treats you well, he won't let you go unconditionally. In my opinion, there's a 60 to 70% chance he's telling the truth when he said he wanted to exchange you for medicinal pills. Really? Tang Shen thought for a moment, then sighed. I know he's not necessarily a good person, but he's not too bad to me. I thought I was careful enough, but when I arrived in Kunwu, I realized I was still lacking. Speaking like this, Tang Shen seemed to have matured a lot. He wasn't younger than Emotienga, and they had been separated for several decades, so it was inevitable that Tang Shen would grow up. Emotienga showed a faint smile. Fellow Taoist Tang, you can't be blamed for this. You've never been to Kunwu, so you naturally don't know the situation here. Besides, you don't have anything to conceal your physique. If you were targeted by high-level cultivators, you'd be easily seen through. Concealment physique? Tang Shen's eyes lit up. Elder Yi, is there really something that can conceal one's constitution? Of course. Emotienga muttered to herself for a moment. She remembered Shui Linbua once said she learned many of her techniques from the Bichuan court female cultivator who saved her. Among them, there was a set of cultivation techniques that could conceal one's physical condition. She also relied on that set of cultivation techniques to deceive Wanderer Baiyu. So why didn't Tang Shen know about it? The founder of the sect, Primordial Lady Bishui, had a pure Yin constitution. She should have passed down such a technique. Why don't you know about it? Tang Shen hung his head dejectedly. Elder Yi, we also don't know the exact place where the founder passed away. What was left in Bichuan court was only a part of the founder's collection, and many of the cultivation techniques passed down were incomplete. Among them, there was indeed a set of cultivation techniques that could deceive the divine senses of high-level cultivators, but only female cultivators could practice it. Oh, I see. Emotienga nodded. This wasn't strange. After all, Emo Yaoqing passed away more than 5,000 years ago, so it was impossible for everything to be passed down. Moreover, she was a female cultivator, so it was naturally more suitable for her to practice female cultivators' cultivation techniques. However, presumably, even if it was passed down, it wouldn't be as good as her spirit-concealing pendant. Mo Yaoqing was always worried about her constitution back then, which showed that the cultivation technique she used to conceal her constitution wasn't very effective. Mo Tinga thought for a moment, then said, although physique-concealing cultivation techniques are rare, they're not impossible to obtain. A set of brilliant breath-concealing technique is enough. It might not necessarily be able to deceive high-level cultivators, but it's better than not using it. Quanzhong City is a trade city, so we can look for it in the trade fairs here. Upon hearing this, hope ignited in Tang Shen's eyes, but he was a bit hesitant. Elder Yi, do you need a lot of spirit stones? My Qingquan bag was taken away when I was captured. Although Senior Jing later returned my Qingquan bag to me, there weren't many spirit stones left inside. His words made Mo Tinga laugh. Since I'm Bishuan Court's guest elder, I naturally can't ignore you when you're in trouble. I'll pay you the spirit stones first. You can give them to me later if you have a chance. Tang Shen didn't refuse. Right now, he really needed a way to conceal his constitution. By the way, Mo Tinga asked, how's Bishuan Court doing? Speaking of this, Tang Shen was a bit excited. Ever since we discovered the spirit stone mine in the sea and started accepting male cultivators, our group's strength has been recovering very quickly. It's just that we don't have any core formation cultivators for the time being. However, as long as we can buy core formation medicinal pills, we'll have core formation elders in a few dozen years. At this point, the light in his eyes dimmed. I can only blame myself for not handling things well. I've been missing for more than 10 years, so I don't know what the situation in the group is like. You've been missing for so long. I'm afraid they've already sent people to look for you, Mo Tinga said. Bishuan Court should have a branch in Kunwu, right? Tang Shen said. It's only a small hall with about a dozen people, and the highest cultivation level among them is only in the early stage of the foundation building realm. In that case, contact them first and tell them you're fine. We'll stay in Quanzhong City for a few days and give you a breath-concealing technique. We'll also see if there are any core formation medicinal pills. Tang Shen's eyes widened. Without spirit stones, he was too embarrassed to bring up his original request. After all, core formation medicinal pills were extremely expensive, but he didn't expect Mo Tinga to bring it up herself. Feeling excited, he nodded and said cautiously, Elder Yi, after I go back, I'll report this matter to the sect head. After a while, I'll return the spirit stones along with the offerings you've received all these years. Mo Tinga nodded. At that time, you can directly send them to Xianqing School. If I'm not there, you can leave them for my husband. Upon hearing this, Tang Shen was taken aback. Elder Yi, you're dual cultivating? Mo Tinga nodded with a smile and said, I've formed my gold core now. My Taoist name is Qingwei, and my husband's Taoist name is Shoujing. If you need anything, you can just look for them. Upon hearing this, Tang Shen couldn't describe the feeling in his heart. He only felt a sense of loss. To be honest, he couldn't say he loved Mo Tinga. However, people with pure yang and pure yin constitutions only appeared once every several thousand years. Even if they appeared, they might not necessarily meet again. Coincidentally, the two of them were born at the same time, and their ages weren't too different. Although Mo Tinga once refused him, he still held a faint hope in his heart. He felt that since they had pure yang and pure yin constitutions, they ought to be fated. But now, Mo Tinga said she was performing dual cultivation, so the two of them really weren't fated. Congratulations. After a long time, Tang Shen finally said these two words. Mo Tinga just smiled, then stood up and said, Fellow Taoist Tang, you should rest here. If I need anything, I'll come looking for you. Tang Shen answered, then called out to her. Elder Yi, you're a core formation senior now, so I can't be called fellow Taoist anymore. Please call me by my name. Mo Tinga paused for a moment, then smiled. All right, see you tomorrow. See you. Mo Tinga didn't think too much about Tang Shen's thoughts. Everyone had their own thoughts. If it didn't harm her, she didn't need to care too much about it. The night passed. Emotienga didn't immediately go to the trade fair. Instead, she ordered the steward of the branch to inquire about the breath-concealing technique. Xianqing School's branches outside the school belonged to the steward's hall. As an elder, she could naturally order the steward's hall to help her with matters. The steward of the branch also had some connections in Kuanzhong City. After Emotienga gave him the order, he came back with some news in just 2 days. After confirming that the breath-concealing technique was indeed a high-grade cultivation technique, Emotienga bought it and gave it to Tang Shen. Several days later, Tang Shen received a reply from the news he sent back to the guild. As it turned out, after Tang Shen disappeared, they also searched for a long time, but they really couldn't find him, so they could only follow the sect head's instructions to look for Emotienga. In the end, Emotienga happened to disappear on Demonic Mountain 10 years ago. When they heard this news from Xianqing School, they thought Emotienga also died on Demonic Mountain like those people, so they could only return in disappointment. Tang Shen finally learned about this matter. He was surprised. So Elder Yi also went to Demonic Mountain? Ever since he was caught, he hadn't heard any news from the outside world. Emotienga smiled. And, when the restrictions on Demonic Mountain collapsed, I was trapped inside for 10 years. Tang Shen said regretfully, if we met on Demonic Mountain that year, maybe we wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. They indeed passed each other by each other. However, Emotienga didn't know that when she and Qin were separated, Qin met Tang Shen, and Tang Shen also didn't know he had a chance encounter with Elder Ye's husband. Bishuan Court's guild also brought Wei Haolan's instructions. After they received Tang Shen's news, they reported it to Wei Haolan. Wei Haolan was overjoyed to learn that Tang Shen and Emotienga were still alive, so she sent a message asking Emotienga to bring Tang Shen back. Emotienga thought about it carefully. Even if she obtained the breath-concealing technique, Tang Shen had just learned it, so he might encounter some unforeseen events along the way. Since she saved Tang Shen, she might as well be a good person and send him back to Linhai, so she agreed. For this reason, she asked the steward of this branch to send a message back to inform Qin Shi and her master. Her current cultivation level was already in the peak of the early stage of the core formation realm, so it was time for her to go outside. Since she had to go to Linhai, she might as well travel around. In any case, Qin Shi's closed-door meditation would take at least 10 or 20 years. In addition, Tang Shen's words reminded her of one thing. They didn't know the specific place where Emo Yaoqing passed away, but she obtained the art of Sunu, because Emo Yaoqing sealed a strand of her divine sense in the Emo clan in the secular world. Was it possible that she passed away in Emo family's village, and didn't leave her divine sense in Emo family's village, and only passed away after returning to Linhai? With this thought in mind, Emotienga had an idea. She hadn't returned to Emo family's village since she left, so she might as well go to Emo family's village to look for clues about Emo Yaoqing. She couldn't solve the problem of the cultivation technique conflict caused by her pure Yin constitution and spiritual roots of the origin, but she had seen Emo Yaoqing's personal notes. Although this ancestor was a woman, she was an amazing genius. Maybe she left something behind that could give her some pointers. Once she made up her mind, Emotienga quickly made a decision. She'd let Tang Shen stay in Kuanzhong City first while she returned to the secular world. If she could find some clues, then she'd leave. If she couldn't, she'd go to Linhai to look. Chapter 326. Wearing her cloud-treading boots, she looked down at the town below. It was a very small town, with only a few streets and a few stalls scattered along the sides of the streets. There weren't many people coming and going. Most of them were farmers and commoners. She glanced at them one by one, looking for familiar traces. The inn, the noodle stall, the tall flag with the word tea on the side of the bridge at the town entrance. It was as if time had passed, and she had returned to 90 years ago. She followed the path out of the town, and soon arrived at a small village. On the east side of the village, there were a few houses scattered sporadically with a winding river and smoke curling up from chimneys. This was only a small village under Lianqing in Jin country. There were only 300 or 400 people in the village, which was very ordinary in the secular world. But this place had a different meaning for her. This was her hometown. She was born and grew up here, under her mother's care. She also had a happy childhood. 90 years passed like water, unable to stop the passing of time. The little girl from back then was now a core formation cultivator, while the people from back then had become a pile of bones and a pile of yellow soil. She saw a house with a small courtyard in the east side of the village. It was newly painted, its roof tiles were bright, and there was a woman sweeping the courtyard. She naturally didn't know who she was. Her mother passed away, and she also left. This house must have been given to an uncle, right? The house was still the same house, but she could no longer find the home in her memory. She sighed softly and closed her eyes. Immortals and mortals were different. She would no longer be entangled in the past, but seeing the traces of her childhood, still couldn't hide the faint sadness in her heart. The ancestral hall still stood in the west of the village. Although there were traces of renovation, the walls were still a lot old. She took a step forward, and couldn't help but want to see if there was still a stern old man there. There was a small and narrow room for the library. In that small book room, she learned about such a world of cultivation for the first time, and walked on such a path. Seeing her entering the village, many villagers ran out of their houses and pointed at her. But they didn't have the courage to come forward. Her Taoist robe was spotless, her appearance was picturesque, and her temperament was elegant. She was like a fairy who descended to the world, completely different from the villagers. She walked along the small path in the village. After 90 years, the thin and weak little girl, who was no different from the villagers, had become a magnificent core formation cultivator. She pushed open the door of the ancestral hall. This time, someone finally ran over in a panic, wanting to stop her. "Miss, this is our Mo family's ancestral hall. Women aren't allowed to enter." Faced with her, he couldn't even speak smoothly. In the end, he just mumbled, "I just came back for a visit," she said softly, stepping over the threshold of the lobby. Women were not allowed to enter this hall. She had only entered it once, but it had changed her life. Under the invisible spiritual pressure of a core formation cultivator, the person who stopped her didn't dare to step forward. He could only watch as she walked forward, stood in front of the ancestral tablets, and reached out her hand to touch one of the tablets. Although women were not allowed to enter the ancestral hall, her mother had found a son-in-law, and her memorial tablet was still enshrined in the ancestral hall after her death. At that time, she hadn't confirmed her father's death yet, so there was only her mother's memorial tablet. All these years, no one had paid their respects to her. "Mother, don't you feel very lonely being here alone? I'll take you away and bury you with me, okay?" Mo Tinga smiled, waved her sleeve, and the dust on the memorial tablet was swept away. She then put the tablet into her chinquan bag. "Miss," that person turned pale with fright. No need to panic." She turned her head and smiled at the person. "I'm a descendant of the Mo family. This is my mother's spirit. Today, I came to collect it." Hearing those words, the man was startled. He was speechless. He was a little old man in his 50s or 60s. He thought he had seen all the children in the village, but the woman in front of him was a complete stranger. This fairy-like girl was a descendant of the Mo family? Mo Tinga turned her head and looked at the highest position. Mo Yaoqing's tablet. There were only these 5 words on the jade tablet. There was no title. However, perhaps none of the descendants knew that their ancestor wasn't immortal, right? She didn't know what mysteries were written on this tablet. She muttered to herself for a moment, then gently raised her hand. The jade tablet flew into her hand out of thin air. Upon seeing this, the little old man who stopped her turned pale with fright. You, miss, are you an immortal?" Mo Tinga paused and looked sideways. "How did you know?" The little old man looked at the position where she took the tablet, and was suddenly shocked. You're. Mo Tinga wrinkled her brows. "You know who I am?" The little old man took a deep breath, then suddenly knelt down and kowtowed. Mo Ijiagrit's second grandaunt. Second grandaunt? This title made Mo Tinga fall into a trance for a moment. She thought about it carefully, and realized that among the girls of her generation in the village, she was indeed ranked second. Tianxiao was the eldest granddaughter, and she was the second granddaughter. She smiled. It's been 90 years. I didn't expect someone would remember me. The little old man looked up at her with awe and said, Everyone in the village knows that second grand-aunt was taken away by an immortal. Second grand-aunt, please wait here for a moment. I'll go invite eldest uncle. Eldest uncle? Before Emotinga could ask, the little old man already stood up while trembling and hurriedly ran out of the room. According to the little old man's title, she should be 2 generations older than him. An eldest uncle was also 2 generations older than him. Could it be that there were still living members of the Emo family in her generation? Emotinga felt it was a bit unbelievable, but she would know the answer in a moment. She smiled, then looked down at Emo Yaoqing's tablet. This tablet was made of jade, and it was jade with spiritual aura. When she left the Emo family's village, she was still young, so she didn't know what to make of it. She also didn't feel that there was a small restriction here. This restriction was very delicate. If she wasn't very proficient in formations, and had read Emo Yaoqing's notes, it would have been very difficult for her to see through it, even with her current cultivation level. She would have just treated it as an ordinary piece of jade with spiritual aura. Emotinga smiled, gathered spiritual aura between her fingers, and inserted it into the jade tablet. The hard jade tablet was like mist. Emotinga took out a jade slip from it, and the jade tablet was intact. After taking out the jade slip, most of the spiritual aura on the tablet had dissipated. Emotinga raised her hand, put Emo Yaoqing's tablet back to its original place, and put the jade slip into her Qingkuan bag. More and more people gathered at the entrance of the ancestral hall. It was the first time these villagers saw a woman enter the ancestral hall. Emo Ijia, who was guarding the ancestral hall, not only didn't stop her, but he even kowtowed to her. They surrounded the ancestral hall's entrance, pointing at Emotinga and whispering, trying to guess her identity, but none of them dared to enter. Great-grandfather is here. A commotion arose in the crowd. Eldest uncle, Emo Ijia's excited voice rang out. Here, second grand-aunt is here. The crowd was pushed aside, and a trembling old man with wrinkled skin and white hair, so old that he could barely walk, was supported inside. Seeing him walking over, everyone respectfully retreated. The old man raised his head and stared at Emotinga for a long time with his cloudy eyes. He looked shocked and walked towards her while trembling. Tienga, are you Tienga? She couldn't find any trace of him in her memory, but the old man in front of her overlapped with the grandfather in her mind. Emotinga stared at the dying old man in front of her and said softly, Are you, Tianjun? The old man's cloudy tears fell down. You're finally back. Emotinga took a deep breath. Tianjun should be 2 years older than me, right? She was 98 years old now, so Tianjun should be 100 years old. He was actually still alive. Tianjun, are you okay? Staring at the old man in front of her, who couldn't even walk, Emotinga let out a sigh. This time, when she returned to the secular world, she really didn't expect to run into an acquaintance. She thought after 90 years, the world had already changed. I'm very good. I lived to 100 years old. Very good, very good. Emo Tianjun trembled and wiped his tears. When people get old, they become easily excited. At that time, when they were still children, he always liked to bully his younger sister and pull her braids. Later, when he grew up a bit, he realized he should also show more care to this younger sister. But not long after, she left and never came back. Now he was old and had one foot in the coffin. But she finally came back, but she was still young. He wiped his tears and suddenly remembered something. He said, Right, Tianxiao. Tianxiao also went to your world. Do you know? Emotinga's eyes dimmed. Tianxiao's death was the regret of her life. I met her, she said softly. But she's already passed away. Really? Emo Tianjun sighed. But he didn't feel very sad. He had lived for a long time, and had seen many deaths. He was used to the death of his loved ones. Not to mention his parents and brothers. Even his own children had passed away, and his grandchildren had begun to grow old. He didn't know why he had lived for so long. Tianxiao isn't an immortal. I've long guessed she's probably already passed away. Emotinga didn't explain. It was good to let him think that way. He was already so old, and had long been mentally prepared. So why should she make him sad again? Tinga, you're already an immortal, aren't you? Emotinga smiled. Yes. I'm successful in my cultivation now and have the ability of an immortal. Before Emo Tianjun could say anything, the young man who had been supporting him suddenly knelt down. Great-grandaunt, since you're already an immortal, please save great-grandfather. Great-grandfather he. Before the young man could finish his words, Emo Tianga raised her hand and stopped him. You don't need to say anything. Your great-grandfather is immortal. God is already merciful for him to live to 100 years old. I can make his body healthy, but I can't change his cycle of life and death. Great-grandaunt, Emo Tianjun shouted. Although he was old and his voice was hoarse, he still had prestige, so the young man didn't dare to say anything else. Emo Tianjun looked at Emo Tianga and said, People have to live, grow old, get sick and die. I'm already satisfied that I've lived for so long. But these descendants of the Emo family. Tianga, I know you cultivators need spiritual roots. Only with spiritual roots can you have fated chances to cultivate. Today, I'll be thick-skinned and beg you. If the descendants of the Emo family have this kind of spiritual root, please give them some fated chances. Emo Tianjun was already tired after speaking for such a long time. The young man hastily stood up and supported him. Emo Tianga glanced at the young man and smiled. All right, I'm also a descendant of the Emo family. It's only a slight effort, so it's only natural. But whether they have a fated chance to become an immortal or not isn't something I can decide. Within today, all the descendants of the Emo family can come here to try whether they have a fated chance to become an immortal or not. If they do, I'll take them on the path to immortality. If they don't, then forget about it. Chapter 327. Facing Emo Tianjuan's eager gaze, Emo Tianga sighed softly and shook her head. After half a day of testing, none of the more than 400 people in Emo family's village had spiritual roots, including newborn babies and dying old men. This was very normal. Among mortals, it was hard to find 1 in 10,000 who possessed spiritual roots, even if the Emo family's ancestor was a cultivator. Emo Yaoqing and Zhong Muling, the children of 2 nascent soul cultivators, also didn't have spiritual roots. Moreover, after so many generations, the hereditary factors had long been diluted by other blood relations. There was probably only one person like her, who possessed both a pure Yin constitution and a spiritual root, in these few thousand years. Emo Tianjuan's face was full of disappointment as he muttered. In the end, I still don't have any. Emo Tianga comforted him. Spiritual roots are 1 in a million, so it's normal not to have any. Even if you have spiritual roots, if your aptitude is poor, it'll be even more difficult to set foot on the path to immortality. It'd be better to live happily in the secular world. But how could Emo Tianjun feel relieved by this kind of comfort? Ever since Emo Tianga was taken away by immortals, and his younger sister left with her brother-in-law, a cultivator, he had been yearning for that world. He couldn't do it himself, but his descendants were also good. Emo Tianga pondered for a while, then took out a 5 elements plate from her Qingkuan bag and put it on the altar in the ancestral hall. She then separated a bit of her divine sense and cast a spell on it. I was able to walk on the path to immortality because of the kindness left by my ancestors. Today I'll also leave this thing here. Any descendant of Emo family, male or female, can come here to have their spiritual roots tested. If someone has spiritual roots, even if they're thousands of miles away, I'll still be able to sense them and come to pick them up. Emo Tianjun was delighted to hear this. Tianga, thank you. Emo Tianga smiled. I'm also a descendant of Emo family. Why do you need to thank me? She paused for a moment, then mentioned another purpose. Tianjun, I came back because I want to move my mother's grave. Emo Tianjun was startled. Why? I found my father's remains and want to bury them together. Emo Tianjun said. Isn't it the same to bury them here? Emotinga sighed and said, "Immortals and mortals are different. After I leave this time, I probably won't set foot on the secular world again, so I want them to be closer to me." Emotianjun was speechless. He had lived for 100 years and had seen a few cultivators. He had learned some things about the immortal cultivation world from them. He knew that for cultivators, relatives and clans weren't that important. What united them was not only their bloodline, but also their interests. Among them, there were very few people like Tiange, who came back especially for the sake of their parents' graves. Now that Tiange wanted to move his mother's remains out of the ancestral grave, he had no reason to stop her. All these years, the fourth aunt's grave had been left unattended. Only when he thought of it occasionally would he ask his grandchildren to clear the weeds. "That is fine." After a long time he nodded solemnly. "Fourth uncle isn't immortal. Fourth aunt has suffered all her life, so it's a good thing that she can be buried with him. Besides, you are a family. If you want to move, I have no reason to stop you." The day passed very quickly. In the evening, the young men of Emo clan followed Emo Tianjuan's instructions and handed the urn containing the bones to Emo Tiange. Emo Tiange put away the bones, then stood up. "All right, I should go now." Emo Tianjun stood up shakily. "I'll see you off." Once he saw her off, he was afraid it would be goodbye forever. Emo Tiange gently supported him. A wisp of spiritual aura flowed out of her fingers and poured into Emo Tianjuan's body. Emo Tianjun stiffened, but soon, he felt comfortable all over, as if he was dozens of years younger. "This is..." Emo Tiange smiled and said, "Although I'm a cultivator, I can't change the mortal's way of life and death. But with this spiritual aura protecting your body, you'll definitely be healthy and free of disease when you reach the end of your life." Then, she glanced around and waved her hand softly. The door of the ancestral hall closed without any wind. She took out a jade box from her robe and handed it to Emo Tianjun. "There's a talisman, a low-grade cultivation technique manual, and some miscellaneous items inside. If someone among the descendants of Emo clan is tested to have spiritual roots, and I don't come back, burn this talisman. If there's still no one, it means I've already passed away and my inheritance has been severed. At that time, give the things inside to the person with spiritual roots, and let him find his own path to immortality." Emo Tianjun took it excitedly. Okay. I've put a restriction on this jade box. Only descendants of Emo clan can open it. You must take good care of this thing and never leak it. Otherwise, you might bring a fatal disaster to yourself. Remember this." Emo Tianjun solemnly agreed and carefully put the thing away. Then, Emo Tiange waved goodbye to Emo Tianjun. Under the gazes of the Emo family, a cloud appeared under her feet, and she flew into the sky. She took one last look at the small village from the sky, then turned into a flight light and disappeared into the horizon. The villagers of Emo family's village were still staring at the sky in a daze. "Immortal? This isn't immortal. Father, I also want to become an immortal." "You're a girl. How can you become an immortal? Quickly go and light a fire." "Why can't I become an immortal? Great-grand-aunt is also a girl." Great-grandfather said girls can enter the ancestral hall from now on. Great-grand-aunt is great-grand-aunt. Do you think anyone can become an immortal? You're still disobedient." Emo Tiange couldn't hear these words. She took out the jade slip from her cloud-treading boots and injected her divine sense into it. A moment later, she withdrew her divine sense and smiled slightly. Her premonition was correct. Emo Yaoqing really left a message about her death in Emo family's village. She said in the jade slip that she knew she didn't have much time left in her lifespan. So she returned to Emo family's village to leave an opportunity for the descendants of the Emo family to step onto the path of immortality. She also left this jade slip in the jade tablet to explain her plans. She planned to return to Linhai and make arrangements for her funeral. However, the place she prepared for her death wasn't inside Bishuan Court, but a secret place she accidentally found in the past. Aside from her, Bishuan Court had never produced a nascent soul cultivator. Emo Yaoqing was a genius, so she had many powerful magic weapons with her. She was worried that leaving behind so many magic weapons would be a disaster, not a blessing. After thinking for a long time, she decided to leave some of them to pass on to her disciples, and leave some of them in the place of her death. She then left clues about her former immortal's cave, whether it was the descendants of the Mo family, or the disciples of Bishwan court. If they reached the nascent soul realm, they could see through her restrictions and discover the message. Several thousand years had passed, but things were still beyond Mo Yaoqing's expectations. Mo Tiange was only in the core formation realm, but by relying on the powerful divine sense tempered by the soul-refining art, and her proficiency in formations and restrictions, she discovered this jade slip. What caught Mo Tiange's attention was that this jade slip recorded some things that weren't in her personal notes. For example, Mo Yaoqing mentioned she had a detailed cultivation experience. Not only did it record her understanding of cultivating the art of Sunu for more than 1,000 years, but it also recorded some secret places she'd been to, as well as her own detailed experiences. These were all valuable information, and all of them were stored in the place of her death. This made Mo Tiange extremely excited. Mo Yaoqing's personal notes she obtained before were merely some things she casually recorded, such as the cultivation of spells, the modification of pill recipes, and some immature ideas. She was able to refine the heaven and earth fan, and obtain great benefits from them. According to this jade slip, Mo Yaoqing's cultivation experience was carefully organized after she didn't have much time left in her lifespan. So many of the ideas inside were completely mature. The value of this was far greater than that personal note. Besides, the cultivation experience also recorded the methods to enter and exit many secret places she'd been to, so it might come in handy in the future. Mo Tiange didn't think for long before she made a decision. Since she found a clue, she'd go take a look. Since Mo Yaoqing left some clues, there shouldn't be any danger as long as she followed the clues. That being the case, she had to go to Linhai this time. After returning to Kuanzhong City, and informing the steward of Xianqing School's branch, Mo Tiange set off with Tang Shen. As for the medicinal pills needed to form her gold core, she pretended that the branch steward had bought them, and gave the dustless pills, extreme clear pills, and so on she concocted to Tang Shen. Tang Shen was very happy to find these medicinal pills of excellent quality. He thought Mo Tiange obtained them through some special means, so he was very grateful. Mo Tiange naturally wouldn't expose him, and let him think so. With the help of a core formation cultivator, Tang Shen safely reached the vicinity of Mount Yuheng in East Kunwu. Cultivators in the core formation realm and above rarely appeared in the secular world. When he came to Kunwu, Demonic Mountain happened to open, so high-level cultivators emerged one after another. That was why he was so unlucky to run into the hands of a nascent soul cultivator. Mo Tiange also reminded Tang Shen about this. Sometimes, he didn't only have to consider himself, but he also had to consider the things happening around him. If he hadn't coincidentally come to Kunwu when Demonic Mountain opened, he wouldn't have been so unlucky. Tang Shen listened obediently. Although he wasn't younger than Mo Tiange, he was far from her in terms of experience and understanding. He was also aware of this. Bishwan Court's guild hall was located near Mount Yuheng. This small guild hall, which only had a dozen or so people, wasn't eye-catching at all on Mount Yuheng. People who didn't know would only think it was a small shop. This shop sold some special products from the Eastern Sea, which was considered special on Mount Yuheng, so its business was quite good. However, Tang Shen told Mo Tiange that the things sold in this small shop were ordinary things. The truly valuable materials were directly sold to the nearby cultivation groups and big clans. For Bishwan Court, this was actually quite a lot of income. Mo Tiange was a bit tempted. The Eastern Sea had one kind of product that Kunwu didn't have: beast cores of demonic beasts in the sea. These beast cores were different from the beast cores of demonic beasts in the southern forest. They could be concocted into some special medicinal pills. It would be a good thing if they could facilitate the beast core transaction between Bishwan Court and Xianqing School. After all, with her there, Xianqing School wouldn't lower the price too much. Other cultivation groups would inevitably use their power to pressure others, so Xianqing School would also have another channel to collect materials. However, this matter couldn't be rushed. Beast cores weren't something that only low-level demonic beasts had. According to the Guild Hall, Bishuang Court still didn't have a core formation cultivator, so they didn't have the ability to hunt for beast cores of demonic beasts in the sea. After arriving at Bishuang Court's Guild Hall, the two of them stepped into the transporting formation under the respectful escort of the Guild Hall steward, heading towards Linhai. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.